right, good evening and welcome to the October 24th, 2024 meeting of the Holliston School Committee. We have a quorum. One more will join us later, but we will get started. So we'll call the meeting to order and we'll go to our consent agenda. I did put into the folder one additional set of minutes that Joe was nice enough to prepare for us. If you want to amend the consent agenda, just add them. They're just the minutes from our pre-town meeting, so they are fairly basic. Does anyone want a second to look at them, or are we good at adding them? Okay. All right, so I'll accept the motion to amend the consent agenda to add the October 21st.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, now I will accept the motion to approve the consent agenda, including the gifts. Is everyone just? All right.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Thank you, that passes. All right, we now have a report from our student reps. Welcome.
So the PSATs happened last week and they went smoothly. Field hockey senior night was on Monday and the youth program came and supported. And then tonight is the boys soccer senior night. Hopefully that's going well. The class of 2025 has two fundraisers on November 5th. They're doing one with Krispy Kreme and then the flag football fundraiser, which went really well last year, so hopefully it'll do well again. The class of 2027 is doing a cookie dough fundraiser on October 28th. And then DECA just had a field trip to Bentley College.
Last Sunday, the class of 2025 had a dumpster day. I heard it went pretty well. HOSA and Wise Club, they're both having a bake sale outside of the gym before the election. The term ends on the 31st, and that is as well as the last day of the French exchange students being at the school. Student Council is doing a voter registration drive tomorrow for the students that don't know how to register, how to vote. Monday, November 4th is the mock election, and it's run by the students from the elections class, and NHS has a canned good drive October 29th.
Great, thank you very much. School committee comment. Should go down the line.
Yeah, we have one call out town meeting. We got the approval for capital budgeting for the Rams. Oh, sorry. The Rams roof got approved, so thank you, town meeting. That's going to, well, part of it, good part of it. So that's all from my side.
Okay, Joe.
No additional comments from me.
I want to thank CPAC for all their efforts in planning a successful trunk or treat last week and their upcoming unified basketball game. A lot of fun, inclusive activities for the community.
No comment.
I just want to thank everyone for attending town meeting and for helping get through it in one night. Everyone thought it was going to be 2 nights, so that was excellent. The Rams won acts for this weekend, so that so make sure to take an opportunity if you can to show up. But other than that, I am good. So we'll now move on to public comment. We have 3 public comments. Is there anyone on the Zoom? Okay. So we'll start with Michelle. If you just right there, just move the, just move the.
Thank you. I have copies. Do I need to do anything? Just I'm Michelle Hastings.
Address.
142 Hanley Road. Figured that, but I've never done this before. I have copies of what I'm saying. I don't have copies for everybody, but I'll leave them here so that if anybody wants to grab them, that they can. I'd like to take a moment to revisit the statement that I read at our school start time committee meeting this past Tuesday. I believe it's important enough to share again, and additionally, I've been told by several people, and I noticed it myself, that the Zoom recordings of our meetings are very difficult for others to follow and understand, so I feel like it's important. I want to say this again. I joined this committee to put students first and ensure we take care of our faculty. Unfortunately, at this point, I feel like we are failing to do either. We surveyed the staff, and the responses are truly alarming, with many indicating they may need to leave the district due to the proposed later end times. extending the school day beyond 3 p.m. would make it nearly impossible for a large portion of our staff to continue working in our district because many have children, second jobs, are taking required courses that enrich our practice, and have other commitments, just to name a few. A later dismissal would severely impact staff, ultimately affecting our students. The following information is based on a survey of 170 staff members focusing on school end times and their impact on the staff. 2:30 p.m. has minimal impact. 3 p.m., 67 staff members report a moderate impact, while 25 staff members face a significant impact. 3:30 p.m., more than 70 staff members experience moderate impact, and approximately 75 report a significant impact. There is a jump from 25 to 75 members facing severe impact from those two times. 3:45 p.m., the impact becomes more severe, with 118 staff members reporting a significant impact, along with an additional 40 staff members facing a moderate impact. 4 p.m., over 126 staff members experience a significant impact, and 34 more face a moderate impact. I understand the desire for a later start time for our older students at the middle and high school, but the logistics of only having 2 different start times make it impossible without make it impossible without affecting at least one of these schools. I also believe the community and most of the staff didn't fully understand the implications of adding 10 to 15 minutes to the school day. Many families thought that supporting the override meant a pay increase for teachers, not an extended school day, and staff thought it would result in, at most, a 10 to 15 minute extension of their current end time. It's important to note that there's no way staff will be able to leave the parking lot at the same time as buses and families. This will extend the staff's day by at least an additional 10 to 15 minutes. I've spoken to several staff members who would actually rather give back their pay increase than have some of these changes. I want to note that that's from conversations and not data that was collected. The only data that was collected was from above. This is off what I'm reading right now, but all for me. This is not the union, it's not any, this is me representing the teachers. Staff didn't realize this change would disrupt bus schedules and significantly alter their workday. While shortening the gap between Miller and Placentina was a major concern for parents, the proposed changes only reduced the time gap slightly from 1 hour and 20 minutes to approximately an hour. The quality of our students' education will suffer if we lose experienced teachers due to these changes. A later end time would also affect coaches and staff involved in after-school activities, many of whom have said they would no longer be able to participate. I believe we need more time to carefully evaluate this decision. Rushing such an important choice that affects so many members of our school community doesn't seem right. A pause would allow us to consider all factors more thoroughly, especially since this impacts students, faculty, after-school activities, second jobs, and appointments. I realize that more time to evaluate this isn't realistic, but we can't have later start times, an additional 15 minutes, and teacher retention. Something will be lost. And if sleep is our priority, we will have well-rested students with no seasoned educators to teach them. What's our priority in Holliston? Later start times for high school and Rams, are they both a priority? Only 2 bus routes, teacher staff retention, the additional 15 minutes? I feel as though we've proven that we can't have it all. This is what I've written after Tuesday. That was my statement. At the start of Tuesday's meeting, no school committee members were present when I read my statement. Later during our discussion, a committee member made comments that felt unprofessional and critical of teachers. As a volunteer on this committee, this experience discouraged me from participating in future meetings and sharing my voice. It highlights some of the concerns that teachers have expressed about the challenges with the climate and culture in our district. Teachers always put students first. That's the nature of our job, and we're constantly trying to balance work with our personal lives while investing significant personal time and money into our profession. At the same time, we manage family responsibilities and financial obligations, which for some includes seeking additional employment. All of this affects how we handle potential changes to the end of our school time and impacts our staff. I honestly don't think anyone, whether it's the school committee, administration, or even the union, fully understood the logistical challenges of adding an extra 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes to the school day, adjusting the start times, and prioritizing sleep for our oldest students when decisions were made about the override and contracts. The fact that our committee still can't reach a solution underscores this, as new issues continue to arise. To make an informed decision, we need more concrete data, specifically regarding the various bus routes scenarios. We've requested more information about the bus routes, but have been told it's too difficult to determine until decisions are made about which school groups are going together and the timing. And these decisions are closely linked, and it's impossible to make an informed choice without having all the necessary information. At this time, I believe it's in the best interest of everyone in our school community to avoid rushing this decision. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I also want to say I very strongly support the students and how this impacts you. I would this is my teacher-based portion of this, but I have many hats, and I'm a parent. I grew up in this town, a parent of 4 children that have been in this district. I've done all 4 buildings for many years. I don't anymore, but I walk the walk. I really feel this passionately. I feel it passionately for the faculty and for how it affects you guys. I do. Thank you. I'll leave those there.
So thank you, Michelle. Hold on one second, if you would.
Sure.
So the survey you're talking about, do you have? Can we get a copy of that?
I can find out if you can get. I would think you probably could get a copy of it. I'm not in. I don't have. I didn't. That portion was sent out from our union. So
Who was part of the survey?
the people that are within the union, it was sent to all the members of our union.
But every school?
Every school, absolutely every school.
And staff is teachers, paras?
Everybody who's
secretaries?
part of the union, this was sent to.
When was it conducted?
This past weekend, so we had time to have it before the meeting that was on Tuesday, so we had some information.
I mean, I do think we need to clarify a little bit, though, because we were very clear going through this entire process about what this meant. On May 28th, we did a presentation to the select board in which we said that upon passage of the override, the Holliston School Committee will commence a process, which is what this committee is, to reduce bus runs from 3 to 2. Mm-hmm. We said that Miller would be starting later. We also said that we would be working to make Placentino earlier, and there do seem to be some issues with that. That presentation was sent out to the entire community, including all staff, on May 29th. On June 7th, we sent more communication again, reiterating that we were going to be moving we're working to move from 3 to 2 buses. We were very clear. We were so clear, in fact, that it was part of the contract that this decision had to be made by January 1st. That date is driving this entire decision, and part of the reason behind that is to give people time to adjust to change. Now, that being said, I understand that some of the change that is being discussed, right? Because no decisions have been made, but
Sure.
some of the potential changes that are being discussed are quite significant, and we're going to take that into account. But I think that we owe it to everybody to keep an open mind about this, because as much as it is impacting teachers, staff, and everyone, it is also impacting families. I know, I listened to the meeting. I could hear it, actually. Sometimes you have to turn it up a little bit because Keith was kind of loud. But you said that it was only about 20 minutes to close the gap, right? From an hour and 20. It's actually an hour and 25 right now, down to 60 minutes at least to start. But that 25 minutes is actually doubled, right? So it's actually 50 minutes. And so what we have right now is a very tight gap that we're trying to widen, because you've got a lot of working parents, stay-at-home parents, that 50 minutes a day may be the time to get them to and from an errand that they need to run and back, so then they have some time to do some things around the house or get to their job and get back. We're trying to balance everything, and I hear you, and I appreciate that. But I think it's frustrating to hear some of the things that you're saying, because we spent 3 months fighting for this contract, fighting for the teachers to try to get this passed. The community showed up in overwhelming numbers. 66% of the community voted for this override, and they weren't just voting. I mean, they were voting to support the teachers, they were voting for these pay increases, but they were also voting for the things that we talked about. Fixing the start times, which I think over time we realized that was not optimal. And one of the reasons it wasn't optimal is at the time that the decision was made, we didn't have the money, so we included $200,000 in that override for these additional buses. They were voting for the extra instructional time that we were working to provide to students. So, I appreciate this, and teacher voices are very important and are obviously going to be weighed heavily, but so are all those that are impacted by the decision, parents, guardians, and things like that. So we're not negotiating the contract, though. The contract's done.
Oh, and I understand that.
Yeah.
This is just me sharing really, truly my feelings other than that one section in regards to the data that we collected in regards to that. And then the other things are, part of it is from conversations that I've had with people. I had a conversation with a parent just today about the fact that they didn't realize all of the ripple effect implications that, and maybe you guys did. I don't know. I can be totally wrong. I just assume there's so much involved with this, and in our committee, it's mind-boggling to me all the different variables that are there, and us trying to figure out the best way to proceed with this. And we're not going to make everybody happy, and I know that that's impossible. I mean, you're a committee. You obviously know that. But I do want the teacher's voice to be important. I understand the parent voice and all that stuff, but I also, as a parent, can say that, you know, I dealt with those 3 years of this bad start time or the inconvenience, and then you move on to the next thing, and you're now, you know, you're dealing with the other start time that's now there. But I'm also looking at this from a teacher's perspective, like, this is like, they have after school jobs and they have other things that they're doing and they're trying to get to their families as well. I just want it all to be considered when all of this is part of the conversation. And I'm a parent. I'm looking at it from all aspects. That's really what I'm just trying to say.
Well, and again, those are important voices, and that's why when we were discussing this during the override, we said we don't have the final decision because we want to go through the process. We want to have teacher involvement. We want to have parent involvement, have administrator involvement. We've got a select board member on the committee as well. You know, we are hearing from all the voices. You guys are going to make some recommendation, hopefully, and then we will. Decisions are hard, and then we're going to have to start doing some work, and that may, you know, include some additional discussion, surveys, or something like that. But it is important, and I hope that the committee is able to come to with at least some recommendation, even if it's 2 recommendations with different pros and cons that we can look at and you know, try to do what's best for the community, because we are listening, we are hearing. Because you also made that comment in the meeting that you don't feel heard. And what I'm saying is, I mean, we are hearing, and I've had some conversations with Keith since then about different things to look at. But we also are dealing with a compressed schedule, and it's unfortunate that we have to do it in this time. But it's also been something that we kind of, I mean, you know, when I joined the committee 2 years ago, Keith was still thinking about different ways of doing the start times. I mean, it's not something that ever really stopped being thought of. So it's not like it's a new thing to wrestle with. It's just that the nitty-gritty, and I urge everyone at home to watch or to listen to those meetings, because it is incredibly complex. So anyway, thank you. Does anyone else? But this isn't I just want to be clear, this is on our agenda, so I view it as fair to have a conversation about this.
If there's anything we're learning in this committee, it is challenging, right? I mean, I don't know. I certainly didn't come in thinking we'd have 3 options and we'd pick one. I think we're digging into it, and that's the difficulty of this committee. I mean, I agree. We likely need more time, but
more information too. I think it's very hard. There's so many ifs. It's like if this.
The only thing I'll caution, I agree. However, I think sometimes there's analysis paralysis, right? And I think sometimes we need to go with what is the most ideal, but not perfect. And I think some of the conversations we've been having is like, it's perfect for me, so I want this, or it's perfect for this group, so we want this. I don't think any solution is going to have a perfect for anyone.
Totally agree
So we
with
have
that.
to look at that. But I think the principles we have are still solid. Like, we need to look at 2 bus runs. We spent 2 meetings on 3 bus runs, and that's how we got to a 4 o'clock exit for one of the schools, at least.
I just think it's important. The 4 o'clock is not an option.
Yeah, exactly.
As far as I'm concerned,
I mean, the survey tells us 3:30 we're teetering on.
I just think that, I mean, we have to talk about it because, there are a lot of other macro factors that are going on. There's the bridge that may or may not be open. I mean, so you had to kind of look at it, but that's not, I just, to the community, that 4 o'clock end time is.
So that's why 2 bus runs, though, is necessary. So now it comes down to, okay, what groups can go together? I do think out of everything that happened this Tuesday, at the end there was some productiveness of, could we get through some of these challenges that block us from proceeding with an more optimal solution? Not perfect again.
I hope so. It's frustrating because we don't know that we can have the 2 bus runs. We don't know that we're going to get that bid. So it's just all those variables make this extraordinarily challenging.
Yep.
Because it's just, there's so much information we don't have, and so I guess that's where the frustration lies in everyone that's sitting in that committee. It's very challenging.
Definitely agree.
Thank you for everything you guys do. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Barbara?
Hello, I'm Barbara Ryan, 14 Irving Place. Kind of a three-pronged sharing. First, I just want to thank the administration and our building leadership, our principals, and Dr. Kusko especially. It's I think you're in your 5th year, I heard you say earlier, and not always been an easy ride, but I think the steady hand of leadership has been there, and all of you really have helped us through not only COVID, but to get us to somewhere better. And I just want to publicly say that. Thank you as a parent with now a first year in college and a first year in the high school, which is no small feat as parents or caregivers. And certainly all of you, thank you for helping to shepherd my children to better about themselves and their education. In my PTO hat, I'm the current PTO president of the executive board. I just want to thank the school committee for what you do and for always accepting the donations. I know that's kind of something we're all getting used to, this process, which protects not only our school system, but it helps us to create that good in the community with the generosity of materials and time and money, everything from supporting breakfasts to the invitation to now revitalize a little bit these inner courtyards for our students here in the high school to take advantage of. And we've gotten a great community response for a very large job, but with your help and with the leadership again in our schools, we've been able to do some really positive things from the PTO. So thank you for that. Now on to a little bit of the homework I've done, and I have been going to the start time and the bust meetings as a curious Jane public, as I've named myself lately. I'm going to lots of meetings, but I'm just trying to stay involved for many reasons. It's partly who I am, but I feel it's my responsibility as a taxpayer and as a parent and as a community member. I think to look at a holistic approach or a whole of district approach, first I looked at the 6 September information on school committee, and our spend per student is the lowest in the region at about $15,000 or so, and every district surrounding goes up the spend per student. So I think that's really curious. We're about in the middle for tax base. We don't pay as much as maybe Wellesley, but we don't pay as little as some other towns. So I think that's really interesting that we are even below, the national average is $15,908 per student. So I think we're in that $15,000 pocket. So when we look at trying to make changes, what are we spending per student and how do we do that? And how do we match surrounding communities? Learning, I'm really encouraged by what I'm hearing for everything from what you're doing to the administration to make those threads from pre-K through 12 plus. We have a new math curriculum, which that's been a real struggle, and if you look at normative data, we haven't been doing so well. Do numbers matter? Yes. Do rankings matter to some? Not to me. It's I look at my individual child. So I'm encouraged by these curriculum changes. Our literacy focus, our STEM is very important, but how do we write? How do we read? And then I know there's a focus on AI, and how do we encourage that in the most healthful way? So that's the learning is incredible to me. Keeping great teachers, I can't say much more than what Ms. Hastings has said. That data that's presented in September, it is alarming, but the trend is going back up to keeping good people. So that's a tough nut that all of you have to help us figure out as community members and taxpayers, and to keep our great teachers. And lastly, start times. When I looked at the why, it said the HPS request is almost entirely to fund the teacher contract as well as for additional buses that are needed to fix the school start times and increased instructional time that is part of the contract. So that to me is what we voted for. Right? I mean, that's the crux of it. There were a lot of things that were being touted, but that's the crux. The teacher contract, buses, and maybe additional funding, $200,000 or so, and then looking at the start times. My pediatric nurse practitioner hat, I've been in these meetings, I've been able to speak. There needs to be a holistic approach. It's not just the late start time. It's how are we helping parents and caregivers understand devices need to be put away at a certain time. We're all learning to live with tech 10, 15 years down the road. So how do we help help with that. Can't tell me what to do in my house, but yet later start times do relate to mental health and do relate for the teens and tweens especially, performance, discipline, etc. I think this plus 15 minutes still feels very nebulous to me. Where is that going? What instruction? How does it apply to 4 very different buildings with different developmental levels of learners, right? Where does that go? How do we do that? And that really, this 15 minutes has created a domino effect. So I've said a lot of things, a lot of thank yous, and then there's really a lot of work to do. And I'm not so sure if in 2 weeks we're going to have the answers from the school bus and start time committee. Contracts have to be negotiated and put out for buses. So there's a lot to figure out. And so I respectfully request that either consideration would be given to have more dialogue to make decisions that we have to make right now for buses and busing. But there are a lot of things to consider. So thank you for doing the hard work, and thank you for letting me speak.
My name's Denise Irving. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
38 Taylor Road, Holliston. I've been teaching in this town since 1999. I've been living in this town since 1996. I'm not going to read all of what I wrote because it's a lot of just supporting what my colleague Michelle said and what, sorry, what was your first name?
I'm Barbara.
What Barbara said. I just kind of am thinking the same thing, like we're in education, and I just feel like we should pause and be more thoughtful about the decision and like really come up what is with the best solution for teachers and students and how that's gonna play out. It's okay, like I'm a teacher, I do this all the time. It's okay to say like we made a mistake, we didn't understand the full ramifications, we didn't understand the ripple effects, we didn't realize the implications of this decision and how it would impact and how there are all these moving parts. I just, at least for me, thinking about the time, like the 15 minutes, and I know you just said, Dan, that we have to, 4 wouldn't be a time, but like for Miller at least, that's like a 120-minute difference. I mean, nobody thought, oh, we're ending our day at 2, now we're gonna have to come at 4. Like that's a huge thing to ask. Like my husband's a firefighter and he starts at 8. Imagine they just say, okay, next year you're gonna start at 10. I mean, it's a big difference. And I do totally appreciate when I went down to the tent when you guys were there and you were there and you've been doing a ton to support the teachers and the parents are all there. And it's really great, like how this community rallies. This community, Holliston's like that with everything, right? They support things, they help people, they do things. I just really feel like it needs to be more time. I feel like things are just rushed and just like, for example, I don't feel like there's a lot of forward thinking, and this doesn't have anything specifically to do with the start times, but like, for example, has anyone thought of like when one of those houses goes on sale on Woodland Street, like purchasing one of them, like one just went for sale and then bringing in another way to get into the Miller Placentino complex and like solving the problem for the future so that it's not one way in and one way out, like maybe there's a teacher entrance. Like all the other schools around us have solar panels, and like when I mentioned that several years ago, everyone says, oh, it's not like, you know, the cost benefit or whatever. But it's a public school. It's not going to go anywhere. Like over time, we're going to reap the benefits of that. So I just feel like a lot of the things we do, and I'm just using those examples, it's like really short-term thinking. It's not long-term thinking. Like there was a 40-acre lot for sale across the street from the park and rec, and I emailed the school committee and said, hey, why don't we look into buying that? That would be perfect. It could be like Hopkinton. You could put the high school up there. You could put the middle school up there. Maybe you can't do it for 15 years, but that's okay. Like, let's think long term instead of short term. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like, let's really do stuff the right way. Let's really think forward, long term, and not just rush and do stuff. And all the 25 years I've been here, I could obviously come up with a ton more examples, but I just feel like being more thoughtful about stuff and really processing it and really putting everything into play would help us come up with better decisions for our schools. Thanks.
I'm just going to reiterate, as far as pausing goes, I mean, we have an agreement that was negotiated with the HFT that these decisions need to be made by January 1st. This was something that we agreed to. It's in an MOA. So we're dealing with the facts that we have before us, the agreement that we have before us.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I voted no, but that was me.
I just want to clarify, too. I mean, 4 o'clock's been brought up a lot. In the committee, we talked about all the options, right? Part of it was to see what is the art of the possible, and that's where 4 o'clock did come up when we look at 3 bus runs. From my knowledge and where we're going as a committee, I think we've ruled out 4 o'clock was a scare factor. We're not going with 3 bus runs. We can't with the 15 minutes. Otherwise, the school will get out at 4. So I just want to make sure those at home don't feel like we're settling on 4. As Dan said, we're not going with, we can't end at 4 logistically.
But the concern is that if we don't have the busing to do the 2 bus runs, then we would have to go back to the 3 bus runs. And I think that's very scary and frightening to think that the 4 o'clock time could be a possibility. So I think that's where, again, all those factors that we don't know, it is a possibility. And then I also want to mention that, if you don't get the 2 bus runs, would we then try and ask for the 2 bus runs the following year thereafter? And everybody said yes. And I just feel like changing teacher schedules, student schedules, parent schedules year after year is just, I don't know, it's very frustrating to, I'm sorry, I'm probably not supposed to speak right now anyway, so I'll stop.
Understood.
Anyone else? We'll obviously get an update from
Yeah, we need to move on.
You want to move on?
This is public comment, so.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our administrators for being patient with us there. But we will move on to the district and school improvement plan.
We have our amazing building principals here tonight, and we're here to talk about our school and district goals for 2024-25. And I'm going to just do a very quick, brief overview because we've heard multiple presentations since August from all of our central office leaders. So I want to dedicate most of the time to the school, but I'll just run through kind of the process that we've done the last few years, in particular since we did this new strategic plan 3 years ago. So as always, we're tying all of our work to our mission and vision. Vision is very simple: embark on your journey, personal, local, global. Our core values are listed here. We share them. They're embedded out throughout all of our buildings. We have posters. Our 4 arches of our strategic objectives. Arch 1, communication practices. Arch 2, social and emotional well-being. 3 is teaching and learning. And Arch 4 is talent and resources. And as you've heard me, for those of you who have had to listen for multiple presentations throughout the years, we really are aligning and embedding all of this work in everything we do with our budget cycle. We align, try to do a multi-year look through and try to align to all of our arches when we request priority needs, which our new people will hear us talk about in January. And then we also, every PD day, we embed these arches and talk about the work that we're doing today is related to Arch 1 or 2 or whatever that is. And literally, the conversations have been happening in all buildings, and we're so well aligned right now, and that happens because we've made such a concerted effort to do so. So if you look on the slides, we did insert on everyone's, oops, unfortunately, I should have probably not tried to link, but if you go to the link, you'll see that we've also inserted on every one of these we have all of our action steps related to our 4 arches and all of our strategic initiatives. So we embedded those for you to look at. They're very long, so we're not going to be sharing those tonight. But what we will do is make sure that you have access to those, and we're just going to do a snapshot of some of that work right now. Under Arch 1, communication, we're looking at some key takeaways for the upcoming year, expanding our SMORE footprint. We've been doing a ton of work getting SMORE out there. I put in the corner, that was our welcome back message, and I don't like being videotaped, but I thought for parents that don't know me, in fact, I've had some parent coffee hours this week, and some of them had not met me before, so I thought, okay, before your kids come, you at least know who I am. And we're still getting views from our welcome back message from 7,274 people, so I'm sure that doesn't mean they're reading every single detail, but just that people are coming back to it and hitting on it. And our principals are using that as well, and they're getting this very large number of hits as well, which is a good thing. We are making sure that we have devices to translate for students. We've been piloting some devices right now, and we're looking at all types of different options, particularly for our ELL students that are at level 1 that really come in having no English acquisition, and now we're expecting them to have them being thrust into classrooms, so to have translation devices that are in real time so they connect with teachers and students. Cybersecurity, as you know, is a huge thing that we have to focus on. We have received a grant, and we're working with the town, and we're going to have updated training on cybersecurity again this year, and all of our teachers, I think, will be getting trained in January, but we're waiting to get that for sure, but I think it's going to be our January PD date. We already talked tonight at length about school bus start time, so I won't belabor that. And then we're looking at web services, web resources for the Family Hub under Student Services and multilingual homeschooling Title I. Under Arch 2, social and emotional well-being, as you know, our Director, Bessie Allen Equity, has done an immense amount of work and also works with Jess Beatty to enhance mental health supports. He's working district-wide and developing partnerships throughout the community. We've had PD in multiple areas on trauma-sensitive practices and social-emotional learning. Continuing to foster a safe and supportive school climate. We're doing culture and climate surveys, having culture and climate teachers are working in culture climate groups at the school levels, and that work continues district-wide. And then looking at data. You heard us talk August 29th. We had our data presentation, and we talked about the data dashboard that we're using, and we'll be sharing much more of that tonight and then in future conversations as well. Under teaching and learning, and then the data dashboard for intervention and curriculum. We've talked at length about the multiple curriculum reviews we've been doing from year to year. And that's how we were able to purchase the math resources, by identifying an immense need for curriculum resources district-wide had not been purchased since 2015. And then health responsive teaching, PD is happening in all buildings and throughout the district. As you know, we presented already that we're going to be working on the math study group, and we'll be bringing recommendations to you soon. And Dr. Menard and I have met a couple of times with that math study group already, and it looks like we may be able to get a recommendation to you sooner than the date that we proposed in February, so I'm not promising yet, but we're hoping to get you something sooner, because the teachers are really anxious to know what's happening for next year so that they can plan accordingly as we move to Algebra 1 for grading in particular. School start times and launching of the new IP have been really important, and then alignment of special education services, continuance and supports. Under Arch 4, talent and resources, we're still trying so hard to attract, retrain, recruit, do anything we can to support people coming to the district, but then what do they do when they get here? How do we retain, especially some of that we've been able to hire some wonderful people, looking for some diverse candidates, and then we need to tailor some of the things that we're doing so that they feel supported in a district that is primarily white in our teaching staff, and how do we bring people in and then make them feel welcome here? It's still a challenge, so that's an area we continue to work on, and I think we still need to keep revisiting our mentoring programs, new staff orientation. While we're doing a great job with that, we still struggle with some of our diverse candidates. Obviously, coming into the district is challenging just because we don't get as many applicants, but also once they're here, what more can we do to support them so that they're able to stay? But overall, our retention rate has improved. We were at 89% retention rate last year for our teaching, which is about where it was pre-COVID. And in addition to that, We are looking to look for ways to navigate the staff portal that really has a lot of information for staff to access easily, because our previous staff portal was very challenging. As you know, with the contract negotiations, we really have increased our salaries quite competitively, and I'm hoping that that will continue to have our staff wanting not only to come here, but to stay here long-term. Our highest teacher salary at the end of this contract will be at about $125,000, which is quite competitive in the area. And then, as you know, we did apply again for MSBA for both our roof project and the high school statement of interest project as well. We'll be hearing shortly and hopefully get the funding for, or at least get the go-ahead for both projects. In continuing our staff newsletters to get information out related to talent and resources, and using our organizational charts to make sure. I think I shared a new chart that we had done this year because we had the new roles at all buildings. The curriculum interventionist specialists were new at some buildings, so we had to redo the org chart that year for that reason. And then you'll see links here. As I mentioned before, the reason I'm going very quickly through the district overarching goals is because we did do a data and assessment presentation August 29th. The district curriculum team presented at our October 10th meeting. Student services and social, emotional, and equity updates were prior to that. So I will be sharing out these links in our community newsletter on Monday or Tuesday, and people can access those on the website as well. But I figured that would be, we won't be labored since you've had a lot of information on that. When we come back mid-year, we'll be doing, around January or February, we'll do our mid-year updates, and we'll bring that forward to editor share with you at that time as well.
Great. Would you like to hold questions to the end, or how would you like to do that?
There's 5 presentations. Can we ask questions in between?
Do you want to just ask one at each, question in between, is that what you're asking?
I mean, it's really sort of up to the committee. That
Yeah, I don't know what others think, but it's 5. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
It is a lot.
It is a lot. It's all right with you guys. We'll break it up. Does anyone have any questions right now for central office?
I have only one. Sorry, I'll just jump in. So I'm wondering, how are you tracking progress toward the goals throughout the year? So not just kind of looking at, are we completing our action steps, but are those having the desired impact at different points throughout the year?
Yeah, and a lot of that, it depends on which goal we're talking about, but a lot of that's where we're excited about the data dashboard, because a lot of that, the goals that we're trying to establish and the changes we need to make to have a better educational experience for student is driven by the data we have in front of us. So what you're going to hear tonight when the principals each speak is they're going to show you some of the data that help them decide what their goals are for their specific buildings, and it's going to be pretty much a common theme district-wide. So as we come back in both mid-year and end of year, we'll bring back the data, and we'll have a lot more at that time too, because we're just kind of tipping the iceberg with this new platform, and it hasn't even completely been built yet. So I feel like once you see some of the results of that, I think you'll see a lot of progress in mid-year. And they're going to talk tonight about the work that we've done already in the past few years on structured literacy and math, and we're already reaping some of the improvements that we expected to see. As I mentioned earlier to the parents that were here, this is year 3 of our strategic plan, and it takes 3 to 5 years of making changes before you do see progress, and we are actually seeing that progress right now in live time. And the data that they're going to share tonight will show you that some of that has already been moving, but it's also going to show some areas where we still continue to need to move and that we are concerned about, and you'll hear each principal address that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And similarly, the high school link here is for their action steps for the entire strategic initiatives, but they're going to hit on some various areas for each of our takeaways. Mr. List.
All right, thank you. So as Dr. Kuska said, these are snapshots. If you go into the document itself, you'd see a lot more under each of these arches. But really, in speaking for the high school, what you'll see is started last year with the information that we got from our NEASC visit and from the equity audit and the work that needed to be done. And so we're continuing a lot of that work. And you'll see some through lines here, and what ends up being is that our access to data and the ease of sort of starting to be able to pull that data and understand what it means. And so under Arch 1, Dr. Kosu, the next slide has the sort of pictures, I guess. So what you see there is the Panther Pulse. That's just our newsletter, but what we're really working on there is how do we communicate about what's happening in the school across the board to the community. How do we share more about what students are doing in the classrooms, what projects they're working on? Getting in contact with the 8th graders earlier. I got a chance to present at open house. We'll be sending out the first contacts to 8th graders in the next week or so, which is months earlier than we did last year. And we know from, speaking to families that they just, there's some nervousness about high school, and so wanting to know what it's about, what's happening. So we're trying to find different avenues and different ways to reach out to the community and to help understand what's going on, whether it be through social media or emails or any way we can to let the community know what's happening, especially with their support of the vote recently. I think they deserve to know the cool stuff that's going on at the high school. What you also see here is letters. So this is a letter, if they have to be from IXL, which I'll talk about in a minute, but the chart to the right comes from Open Architects, and that's our attendance data snapshot as of a couple of weeks ago. And that just lets us know about our chronic absenteeism, our attendance rate, but what we're doing is sending out monthly letters to families about their own students' absenteeism, because we know that we had a problem at the high school level and across the board with chronic absenteeism, and so we want to have the families more involved in understanding what's going on. And so this dashboard is really helpful, not just in helping us understand that we need to communicate, but who we communicate to, and because it goes down to that deeper level. And so we're trying really hard to communicate all of the information out. We had a coffee hour earlier, and the parent asked what seems like a simple question, but is very deep, like, how do I know how my kid is doing? Like, generally, like, what's happening. And so we're trying really hard to find more ways to communicate to families about grades, about attendance, about what's happening in their classes, and make it easier to understand, because understanding what's happening in high school is really hard unless you're living in it. And again, we'll keep up with my principal coffee hours, even though I only get 2 or 3 parents, but keep them going.
Sarah?
What, Sarah? Yes, Sarah, always there. Yeah, everyone.
You get 3 people to show up to your...
What?
You get 3 people to show up to your coffee hour?
I showed up to dance.
That's like 50% better than...
So but Sarah's always there, which is nice. So I just want to have ways to welcome parents in and to have them be a part of the school, because I say this every year, is that parents hit high school and it's like drop them off and see you later. But we really do want them involved in what's happening here. And so the communication piece is really important to make that happen. And again, for thinking about the younger students and connecting what's happening, for them to be excited about coming to Holliston High School. And then in Arch 2, we talk about social emotional well-being. Holliston High School does a great job of building relationships in the classrooms between teachers and students. What we need to do is be able, again, to understand where we're missing the mark. And again, that data piece is really helpful in starting to build tiered supports for students. We'll have mood check back. We'll have challenge day back again. And new this year, we'll be working with the Northeastern University Center for Study of Sport and Society, because we recognize that the sports field is an area where we don't do a lot of support for our coaches and how to support their athletes, and making it a safe space to, honestly, a safe space to struggle, right? Like, it doesn't seem like it's not a good space for athletes if they have anxiety, if they are feeling bad about their performance, and how do coaches recognize that? Because not all of our coaches are teachers. And so we're partnering with Northeastern University, and the first week in December, we'll be offering training to all of our coaches, so all seasons of coaches. And we're going to then pilot for our winter athletes, we're going to pilot a session with them as well, to be able, again, to understand what it means to be social emotionally healthy as an athlete, because it is very different than what we see in the classroom. So we'll be doing a lot of work there. We've, again, been setting up processes to understand why students are absent, what's going on. Again, that tends to be a larger issue than just they aren't coming to school. And so we want to understand, how do we reach those students, what can we do to support those students, and building in the Open Architects has a model where we can actually track our interventions throughout. Freddie, the student companion. Thank you. That came to me. I was killing time there until I remembered. But it's called the student companion, where we can start to look at a whole snapshot of a student and really understand bigger picture, and it's all in one space, which is, Desi's website is fun and all, but it's impossible to find stuff sometimes. It's all there, it's just hard to find. And so this is really nice to have that snapshot of students and being able to hopefully engage in interventions earlier, and having the curriculum interventionists are a huge piece of that in building those supports, identifying and then supporting those students in various ways. All right, so we wanted to give you a picture of some of the data and how we're using it and what it means when we're looking at it. This is just an overall snapshot, but I'll go into some of what we learned at a deeper level. This is MCAS from the past year, and what you're seeing here are our students, our non-high needs students and our high needs students. High needs students are those who have a disability, low income, or are EL students. That's how they're grouped together as high needs. And so what you can see here is honestly a massive discrepancy in achievement. Nothing else is right there for us to see. But I mean, what we can see though is for a number of our students, like in the math, we do have that SGP. The SGP growth is great, but we still have a lot of work to do. What the Open Architects platform lets us do, though, is dive a little bit deeper. And what I did learn from my deep dive into that is no matter what content area you're looking at here, literacy is a piece that is a struggle throughout. When you look at open response questions, you look at essay questions, it doesn't matter whether it's science or math or ELA, it doesn't matter. That's where the struggle is. And so it's been really eye-opening for me. It's kind of, to be honest, a gut punch to me when I saw what this is in front of me. But I needed that because, and I didn't, you get this on, as I said, the DESI website, but it's not pleasing to the eye, I guess, and it doesn't really, it's hard to dig into. And so here we were able to do that. And so what that does is it gives us, obviously, we have IXL, which is a nice support for students who are struggling. We have the new math curriculum coming in. But what this did allow us to do is to really look at and understand the need for literacy support across all content areas. And so that's going to be a focus moving forward. And even in my conversations, I was saying this in my parent coffee hour earlier with an AP science teacher who said that the student's biggest struggle is reading the question. Like, what's the question asking? They don't know. So these are students you think, oh, they got it, but that's where the struggle is. So, so we're going to be doing a lot of work in literacy, which I know happens is a lot of the conversation at the lower grade levels, but really needs to find its way up into the high school as well. Again, in order to do this, we want to go to the next slide. Just to give another sort of snapshot, this is the DESI slide right here, just to give you an idea, and it's just some scary numbers there, right? Like if you look at the left side, that's all the left columns are all students, so that's all 200 students that took the exam that year. And then the right are the lowest performing students. So that's no longer a high needs designation. That's just the lowest quartile. It's the lowest 25%. So it could be, could have a disability, that could not. Could be EL, could not be. So that's 50 of our 150 students. And you can see that we're not making what is determined by the state as effective progress in any area, even so far as the zero in science achievement. And as you go down and look at the bottom there, you can see that our total towards target percentage is only 55%. So we have a lot of work to do in getting there. And a lot of that has to do with where do we build in supports for kids. And so that's a lot of our schedule work that we're doing. In looking at a new schedule, where do we build in the supports for all students? Where do we get access to challenging courses? Where do we get access to the arts? Where do we build in the multi-tiered systems of supports? That all has to come with whatever schedule that we land on in order to support student learning. We're also looking at, as I said, the math curriculum, looking at that holistically, working with Karen at the middle school to understand, how we can support students who are coming up, and looking at math. It's not just like you go through it like middle school math and then you hit like algebra. Like we have to look at it like pre-K, 12 plus. It really is it's got to be a holistic approach. because otherwise it just becomes too messy when as you get up to the high school level, and I have parents calling every day for this math or this math, but we need to have ways to understand where students are, how to support them, how to help them grow, and even to excel beyond where they are. If you look at something like IXL, like those supports that are built in, you're able to support students who are struggling in certain areas, and you're also able to have them move forward if they want to go beyond where they are in their classroom, which is really nice. Just a couple of other components of looking at Arch 3 and teaching and learning is that we also want to engage students in what they love and what they're doing. And so we got through phase 1, step 1 of the Innovation Pathways grant, and received approval to sort of move on to phase 2 of asking for more approval. And those pathways just engage students in areas that they want to have a focus on. We'll be bringing in a financial literacy fair this year for students in 11th and 12th grade. We will have all students this year will be getting we'll be doing the state mandated civics engagement projects. And we will be also rolling out our Vision of the Graduate rubric, which are those pieces beyond the academic numbers, which will help us understand how students are progressing in the other skills that was in a previous slide, but go in there. And then, next slide.
Pause
Oh, yeah.
for a second. Because you're going to see a comment. We tried to use some of the same data in each building, so you're going to see some of the same things. But there are some notable things with the high school, and part of what our concerns are, as you know, the limitations of schedule. We have been able to build in the intervention model at Placentino, Miller, and Rams for a number of years, and we've actually expanded the model. We've added more tutors, and we've added more. We went from having 2 reading and 1 math. Now we have 2 math at 1 at each building. So we've expanded our model, and you're going to see that the targets are starting to grow in these other buildings. So really the limitations of getting interventions to the kids because of the schedule that we have is really challenging, and I think that's why you're going to see that the model we put in place does work, but we have to have the places to give the model to the kids as well.
And then finally in Arch 4, what we're doing as an admin team to calibrate our work and feedback in the classroom is doing full admin team learning walks, going into classrooms. We're spending a lot of time looking at the data and how to support teachers in the classrooms, engaging them with the curriculum interventionists to support students in the classroom and support that work. And we will be rolling out a opportunity for staff to provide feedback, climate and culture surveys. And then finally on the schedule piece again, looking at what's best for kids. Just spending time working with our scheduling committee to really focus on areas overall that will support the teachers in what they're doing, and most importantly, doing what's best for kids in this and making sure that they all have the opportunities that they deserve throughout their time at the high school.
Great, thank you, and we'll get to the schedule update after all this, but are there questions now?
Can I ask them?
Yes.
So we just heard from Dr. Custa that we were awarded, or the district was awarded, a Innovation Career Pathways grant today of $15,000. I'm assuming that's to do something. Yes.
So it's a 3-step process.
Okay.
The $15,000 allows us to, it's called the planning grant for it. Mm-hmm. And so what that basically allows us to do is start work on making connections to organizations. So when you do an innovation pathway, you're basically saying that you can provide substantial internships, like over 100 hours of internship hours for students in a specific area. So we targeted business, as we have a very successful DECA program. Mm-hmm. After school, we have the business classes. We also have access to, it'll help us if we can pull off finalize a partnership with UMass Dartmouth, where they will offer up college courses to our students at $540 each for 3 credits. Where we could then use some of that money for scholarships. There's lots of opportunities. We have to create those partnerships, and we use that then you can use that money to then market out to students and what it takes to do the class. You can use it for starting to buy, like look at curriculum resources. So that planning grant's there. We just submitted Part A of the application, and we'll find out at the end of November if we can submit Part B of the application, which is Part A is our sort of philosophy around the work, and then Part B is more specific to the finances, what we need to support it, and they're substantial grants. And each pathway is a substantial amount of money to support each one. You kind of apply for like one at a time.
Right, so just for the public, like that innovation pathway is like a school within a school?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you would come in your freshman year. You don't have to enter your freshman year, but you come in, you could take like an intro to business class, and you could just move on. You could go take a marketing class. You could take a data science or a statistics class. And part of it, which is really nice, is that it really the goal is to create opportunities for not just learning about a career, but advanced coursework. So one of the beauties of this is that you have to take advanced coursework as a part of this, but by partnering with some place like UMass Dartmouth, we're able to offer all of our students advanced coursework versus having to take an AP class. And just for state data information, like that counts as an advanced coursework, just like an AP would when you're looking at what our students, how many students take advanced coursework. So it actually provides more access to advanced coursework without necessarily having to say you have to take an AP class.
Thank you.
I have a question. Going back to arch number 2, you said you'd be implementing Mood Check and Challenge Day. What exactly are those, and how would they be implemented?
So Challenge Day happened last year. I don't know how to explain it. Did any of y'all go to it?
Yeah.
I don't know how to. You want to take it? The easiest way to say it is that it is a mix of 100 different students in the building, and you can do it as many times as you want, but it's 100 students in the building, and you understand that we all have our stuff going on, and it's important to understand that we all have our stuff going on, especially at high school level. And that that doesn't even do it justice. I don't know. You want to give it a shot?
It's like vulnerability.
But yeah,
It pulls on
Yeah.
strings and helps, first of all, try to create a space where you can share, sort of things that are going on and know that you're not alone, that in fact you may think that you're going through something that is unique to yourself, but in fact, half of your classmates are experiencing the same thing. It was for someone who doesn't think of themselves as very sort of, emotional, it was pretty cool. So
actually, we had a few people that were in that room. So I was there, Dan was there, Barbara, who's in the crowd, was there as well. But it is meant to kind of break down barriers, break down biases, understand kind of like how everybody's differences are. It's meant to be a very closed setting to provide an opportunity for vulnerability during that time. And for those that are there, students and staff and parents that are there begin to kind of show their vulnerability and know that we're all humans, and despite our differences, we can get together, and it's a very highly recognized award-winning program. You can YouTube it, and you can see kind of some of their like standard program activities that they do within it, and it's quite powerful. David recommended it last year, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So
We're doing it again next year.
We'll be doing it this year. Yeah, this year. Yeah.
there's more dancing than I cared for, but
Joe, we got.
but look,
fantastic.
We're going.
different kids took it different, seriously, different levels of seriousness, but there were definitely some kids who had a lot going on, and you could sort of just see them sort of break down and sort of release that sort of, inner turmoil.
I'd say to kids, just trust me, just do it, which is really hard to do, right? But it's.
Joe, you should definitely do it.
I know, I will not be dancing.
You're not dancing, just do the rest of it.
Yeah, really.
Just make sure if we do it again, make sure Joe gets it.
So we did not have parents or outside other than teachers at the high school, but the middle school did. So.
Yeah.
And then Mood Check is a partnership now with Dr. Tracy Gladstone and Brown University, where they come in, meet with our students, and assess social emotional wellness, risk assessment, with anxiety, depression, and will, if students, based on their conversations with students, if they show up if they're concerned about one of the students, they then provide them with access to outside resources.
When does that happen? During DSB class time?
It happens like throughout the day over a couple of weeks, because you go through every kid. It's the protocols they go through with each kid with their support person. And one of the ideas behind it is that, a lot of times parents, kids don't necessarily want to share stuff with schools. But if they share something with these outside individuals, which, believe it or not, kids do share. Like, even when you look at Metro West, they want to share. And then they work with them, those families, to support them with the outside resources, and then they'll keep in touch with them to, engage them. So it's a nice program that we're able to engage with.
It's a really incredible program, and it does catch kids who are, definitely on the edge of real problems. I remember there were a number of years when we got a grant for it, and then that grant stopped, and the school committee, which is always asking the finance committee for more money, but that was high up on the list, and I thought that was something that I was glad they prioritized, because
I think it's quite literally saved kids' lives, so it's really not, I don't think we ever get rid of that.
No. I'm just saying. It was. I just remember the sort of the fear when the grant went away.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it was palpable for sure.
It's not expensive, but it's not cheap.
No.
Can we look at slide 10 again? I had a question. So
This one?
No, slide 10, the overall goals.
Oh.
So there's a lot there, and I know that's kind of the nature of schooling, but if you could distill this down to, what is the one primary instructional focus for the high school for this year?
So in terms of instructional focus, it's really about tier 1 supports in the classroom, and that's where we're going to be focusing our work.
Narrow further, what's the thing that you're really focused on?
Well, so I mean, just from the data that I've been digging over the past month, we have to focus on literacy. We have to actually look at that across the board. How do we get students more contact with writing? Okay. How do we get students more contact with the skill sets around writing and literacy, close reading skills, note-taking skills? We have to really build those back up. And again, this is from we're able to access sort of in open architects. I get access to AP data, SAT data, all of those pieces. So even when you see good scores, you can still see discrepancies in certain areas. Mm-hmm. And where you start to see those discrepancies really is it, if you want them to recall the parts of a cell, they got that. If you want them to explain, something, that's where the struggle is. You start to see those discrepancies there. So really, it boils down to a focus on literacy and the skills that come with that.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Sorry, I have one more question.
Yeah.
So looking at slide 13, so it was really exciting to see the trajectory of the high school this year. Lots of 4s that you shared on the other side, where you were exceeding the targets in many areas, and some really good outcomes for our students in different content areas. And I know you're very transparent about looking at the high needs students. And for anybody who's not familiar with that, that's a single count of our students with disabilities, our multilingual learners, and our low-income students. And when we drill down deeper into that, it's mostly the students with disabilities that we're seeing the biggest gaps and multi-year gaps. So we're really seeing them pulling away from their peers. So I was wondering, you're clearly using this data. How is this data, especially your students with disabilities, driving your school improvement plan and the implementation for this year?
So working with the new positions, the curriculum interventionists, working with them to really, again, as Dr. Kuss said, they've had some of these structures built at the other schools, and we haven't had them at the high school. And so we really need to have something that not just identifies, but then starts to track and build the tiered support systems in there. And so that's the start of the process there. And then really looking at all the data, and as you said, digging down deeper into those students to see what areas of need and what's happening with those students, and what when we look, is it a schedule thing? Is it the level of the classes they're in? Is it because they're in homogeneous groupings and not heterogeneous groupings, and so they're tracked all the way through? Is that so? We need to understand more. As I said, I think we finally got this all pretty recently. We just got this pretty recently, and so. But I think step one for us is really I'm working with Joel Stembridge and Leah Barton to really identify how we can start building a structure within the high school to support students. But again, the schedule that we have is very limited in being able to offer supports for any student.
I think one of the things we've heard since I've been here and continue to hear is so many things happen during DSP. It's like a catch-all. We do music, we do chorus, we do band, we do all kinds of things. And then for our students that have need academic support, that's often during DSP. And then if they want to do leadership opportunities. So we're asking kids to choose all the time. And so sometimes our special ed students don't go to their academic support because they want to do something else. And that's obviously a violation of their IEP. They do have to attend that. But we're making them make difficult choices. And I think that's part of why the limitations that Mr. List describes are really challenging. And that's why I think you're seeing, because we have wind blocks and different things in place in the other buildings, we have more opportunities to get these interventions to kids and get the right kids in the groups, and we've been struggling with that, and that's why we need to do something.
And I would also say, in terms of the data, what else I looked at when I started to look at the if you go to the next slide, the lowest performing students, that gap. If you pull out students with disabilities and all that, and the students who don't have any labels, let's say, the gap is just as wide for them. Yes. And the struggle is there too. And so it's yes, students with disabilities, but we're also missing that, like because you see, like when it says like, oh, 85% of kids are meeting and exceeding, and then but that's 150 kids, so it's 85% of 150 kids. And then you look at the rest of the students, so you're really talking about a quarter of our building. That's 200 students that are struggling, that we have work to do, and to figure out curricularly. Again, this goes back to looking at a pre-K 12 plus as they're coming to us. Like, how are we having those conversations of support? Like, there are a lot of structural components of the high school that we need to look at to support those students.
I have one quick question. Sorry. Hopefully it's fairly quick slide. Yeah. What are your thoughts around advanced coursework completed 0 out of 4 points?
So you have to, because this is like, we had it basically counts certain classes. There's like a list of classes at DESE that count as advanced coursework. And when you look at the data from the previous year, it didn't go up. In terms of access. We also found, which we found a little late, but at the end of last year, so it didn't make it into our, we didn't find it until the summer, sorry, so it didn't make it into our data collection, is that every course has a number that's a course that you have to choose from the state that corresponds to it. So some of our advanced courses were not actually labeled correctly. And so I don't necessarily agree that should be a 0, but I mean, we do need to do a better job. But again, that's where we're looking at, like, if we can partner with UMass Dartmouth, you then open up a whole avenue of advanced coursework that's available to any student. It's not AP contingent, it's any student. The more of those that we can offer, then we can grow that piece. But then we have other classes that, like, we have high-level classes that don't count towards advanced coursework because we're offering organic chemistry this year, but that won't count towards that.
And knowing it's 10%, I think I'm most concerned. 0 to 4 for science, and however November 5th happens for the MCAS is going to drastically likely change that.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the MCAS graduation piece, the thing is the MCAS will exist.
I'm not saying could. Sorry.
But it's going to exist. Even if that passes, the MCAS will still exist. And so right now, and I've said this to the teachers, like, that's a major data point that we have at the high school. Whereas, like, when you look at the elementary school and middle schools, like, they have a lot of data points that they have throughout their time with the students, but at the high school, it's like we have MCAS.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And so we have to find other ways to collect the data on the students.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about RAMs, and similar to what David said, we have and what Susan said, we have our, if you click on the link, you'll see all of our action steps, and then this is sort of like the highlight reel. And I hope that I can do justice to explain what is going on in the place where I get to work, because there are so many things that are going well. And so I trust if you have a question, you'll ask. It seems like you're asking all the right questions, and also you'll look at our larger action steps and reach out if you have questions. But if we're starting kind of with Arch 1, that's our communication practices at RAMS, we are looking at sort of like year 2 in our behavior support system, and that was put into place last year. It's something called Kickboard. It is a way for us to communicate with students and families and teachers with each other, like in and among, that sort of encompasses more of what the whole child kind of goes through. And I have a slide coming up that you'll see. And then we have sort of our leadership at RAMS, that's like how we're messaging that out, how we're getting that across to families, how we're getting that across to students, how students are buying into that PBIS, that positive behavior intervention system that we have. And for our community engagement, we're using SMORE, we're using our newsletter, we have some other ways that we're reaching out in the community, and then again, we're using the data dashboard with all of our data monitoring systems. Do we want to go to the next slide to talk about those? Thank you. So if you look sort of to the left, that's like our family and community outreach, and you can see we're using the same SMORE format newsletter. It is bi-weekly. It is, I sort of put a new one up at the top there, and then I put an older one where you can see how many hits we're getting. So we're getting anywhere between like 2,500 and 4,500 hits on newsletters, and people going back to things. So it's quite a mix of what you'll see in those newsletters. So we do some community things, we do things that we have going on with other schools, we do things going on with our own school, and we do get a lot of people checking that out. And then weekly, I send out a Monday memo to all teachers and staff, and that's just communicating smaller things, to avoid lots and lots of emails. It does often, bring up questions and kind of create some communication between like administration and staff and teachers. So that is helpful. We also do use Bright Arrow for messaging, and those might be letters that go home to families about IXL or maybe something happening with the buses, so any kind of that communication. And that does have a feature where we can click and say this translates to the family's native language. And we are also working on practicing with our new translation tools and our new EL teacher, making sure we reach out to families that may not have English as their first language. And then to the right of the screen, you can see just a snapshot of what is going on kind of in our PBIS Kickboard arena, and that's been a huge success over the last 2 years. So last year we didn't start it until October, and it's a way for us to kind of put in comments for families when we're recognizing students are doing something fantastic, or whether they're doing something that may be a minor corrective behavior. And last year the buy-in was extraordinary, with over 30,000 comments going in for our almost 700 students. And we have a team of PBIS people, leadership, that work on that. And they have instituted things like our Ramazan store, where the kids can cash in their points and kind of earn things or like items or privileges, but they really like looking at what their teachers are saying, like, hey, I really saw you doing this great thing, or your group really was making progress here, or I saw you standing up for this person. So last year was really our launch for that, and there was huge buy-in, and you can see it's very, very small, and I'm happy to share more data, but we have already thousands of comments entered this year for students, and so that continues to show the buy-in. It also shows we did get some data back that said there's 20% of our students are not feeling like there's enough respect, and 20% of our students are not feeling like their peers would stand up for them, and we can use that data with this platform to kind of say, let's really recognize those behaviors, as a team, as a school. So we can not only use this to communicate with families where there's that drop-off when you get to middle school of communication, but we can also use it within our school culture to kind of build, and it's awesome. So I think that's it. And next we have our social emotional well-being slide. So we do collect data. We do the Metro West Health Survey and the Mood Check. And those are both pieces of information that are aligned with larger forces, I guess, and give us information about our kids and their social emotional health. So it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be some risk behaviors that they're taking. And we're able to use that data and really provide some supports for kids as they go through middle school with our counseling staff. So we can provide some tier 1 supports in the classroom. We can also provide tier 2 supports with counseling and the service providers that we have within the school. And we've been able to take that intervention and monitoring to our organizational chart here that you see, and there's a piece in there that really speaks to this social emotional well-being. So when we have our intervention meetings with teams and with our intervention staff, there's the ability for teachers to bring a student of concern that may not be identified through a mood check or through a parent or through a teacher already, and kind of bring that student to the forefront and then directly to the right point person. And then underneath that, you'll see sort of our attendance data that goes kind of hand in hand with what we're looking at as maybe a concerning behavior for students. So you'll see where our 6th grade, our 7th grade, and our 8th grade are most recently with their attendance, and we are kind of up where we would still like to see some improvement, but we are looking better than we did last year at this time, and we are consistently monitoring that with you'll see that as a through line, going through all the schools, that attendance piece is really big. Some kids are not coming to school because they are not feeling safe or they're not feeling supported, and so we really reach out and address those students. We talk to those families. We create supports for them to come back into the building. It might be something that is easy to fix, or it might be something that's more of a step-in program, and we have classrooms and support staff in place to help kids get back into the building, whether it be just from a school refusal standpoint, or maybe they were receiving care outside of our facility for a while. Maybe it was an injury, so all kinds of reasons why we would need to help kids get back into the building. We're also trying to increase opportunities for students. So we do have, we're using the mood meter, which creates an opportunity in the classrooms at the tier 1 level. That's just at the classroom level where all kids can kind of get that benefit, where we're having that common language using ruler. So that's the tool we're using right now, but regardless of the tool we use, I think we've established as an administrative team that we want to have a common language that kids are learning in the elementary schools, and then we're moving up to high school so they can identify feelings, and we can really help them figure out how to best get to the bottom of getting the best education and experience while they're in our Holliston schools. We have a massive increase in our peer leadership program this year. We have 82 peer leaders, and I want to tie that directly back to Challenge Day, which we kind of talked about We did start that last year, and you've already heard the brief explanation about it, but it was a culture shifter. And that's why we want to continue it. It changed the culture at our building because it made kids see like each other as humans, and adolescent development has them just like in the circle around their feet, and that's appropriate, but this really gave them a broader lens in 7th grade. Then you see the outcome in other places like peer leadership. We have 82 peer leaders this year. That's huge. That's almost double what we had the year before. If every kid wanted to be a peer leader, every kid could be a peer leader. And the experiences, you know, they teach our safe and supportive lessons. They work with staff, the leadership staff, on like what data and what things are important to kids. They go into classes and they teach those lessons to younger kids. And that peer-to-peer interaction, if you go back to Jeriel's his sort of like social emotional, you know, entire presentation, you'll see the most important thing, and we know it. It's 87% of our kids feel that peer-to-peer relationship is like the most important thing to them. So hearing from their older peers is, it's amazing. It's an astronomical thing, and having 82 peer leaders go into classrooms and be able to do that is awesome. But we're also able to expand based on the data and based on our student needs, and with the help of the leadership team, what we give opportunities for those peer leaders to do. For example, we have students that want a quieter space for lunch. So we're working with CPAC on, you know, getting some social pragmatic stuff into a group where there are some peer leaders that go in there and just kind of hang out with kids who might want a quieter lunch and maybe get to be part of a peer group. We have some, you know, lost my train of thought. We have some, we have crisis and counseling meetings that maybe take some of the stuff we get from our challenge day or get from our mood meter or get from our data, and we're able to support those kids through some deeper experiences with smaller groups. So it's really hard for me to say. I hope you can like feel my excitement, but there's so many things going on in the social emotional well-being of our kids. But I probably said enough about that, and we can answer questions later. And yes, we did. We are showing the same data points for MCAS and the same data points for our low performing students. So what we focused on here was directly from the DESE website, but hopefully in a more like snapshot version so that you can see what's really happening. And if you look over on the left, that's all of our non-high need students. So for science, ELA, and math, you can see that the kids in that group are having a lot of success, and that is the majority of our kids in our building. However, if you look at the discrepancy between our non-high need science and our high need science, our non-high needs ELA and our high needs ELA, you're seeing, and the math, you're seeing like a 50-point discrepancy, and that is a huge concern to us. That's one of the reasons why we are doing the interventions that we're doing at the level we're doing, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, and that just means ways we're supporting kids, because that's not okay with us. And again, that high needs group is represented by students who may have more than one, you know, low income, special services, or multilingual learners. So for example, our multilingual learners, I think over 50% of them also are on IEPs. So we're talking about kids that are impacted a lot of times in more than one way. So it would really, like, it matters to look at the subgroups in that group, but it also really matters for us to look at that group as a whole and how we're identifying what we're doing for those kids. And you'll see that in the way that we structured our interventions this year, from the meetings to identifying students through data, identifying students from qualitative pieces from teachers, and then also how and where we provide those services for kids, and at what level, level 2 or level 3 interventions. That happens during our RAMS blocks. It happens in small groups. we have resources and tools like a new math program and like IXL, but those are resources and tools that go behind the people and the children that are doing that work. And we're already seeing growth in our students, and we just started this new model this year. So I feel really hopeful that we'll see some growth in this area for next. And then the next slide, again, this is from the data and accountability from the state, and they give us a score, right? They give us a score based on some factors. The factors are spelled out here. If you do click over all the way to the right, you'll see a lot more data and a lot more things spelled out. But for our purposes, and like to keep this pretty short, what I want you to pay attention to is sort of in the center. As you go down, you'll see that number for our kind of non-high needs students, and then that is compared to our lowest performing students. You'll see a discrepancy in that number. A lot of those students are the same students who are struggling with their MCAS scores. We're able to pull out individual students now. With this data that we had before, we're not necessarily able to do that without really combing through and spending hours and hours and making spreadsheets. But with our data dashboard and with our intervention people in place, we can put that all into one place. We can spend less time identifying kids who are struggling and more time getting to the kids that are struggling with the interventions that we can provide. So yes, this is important to look at, but I think it's more important to know that we have a data dashboard that puts this all together for us, which is super helpful in delivering the services that we need to in helping students. And then in our next slide, still under Arch 3 with teaching and learning, I wanted to give you just a, you can take a look at this on your own. So the numbers are teeny tiny, but it gives you an idea of how many minutes, how much buy-in there is from teachers and students spending time not only in school but at home using IXL, which can be teacher-driven, it can be intervention-driven, it can be independent. Kids can have a lead on this. They can do this as a whole class. They can play games. They can watch videos. But what they do is they make progress. So our students using IXL at Rams, that's what the left picture kind of identifies. Yes, they are using it at Rams and they're using it at home. They're spending tons of minutes getting proficient in skills, in literacy and in math. And then are they making progress? Are they getting something out of this? And you can see that is clear on the right. And again, we will track this from year to year, and it will be more powerful from year to year. Probably our interventions will shift from year to year when we see more growth. But this is just sort of where we are now. So I wanted to kind of point this out to you. And I guess like anecdotally, these, if you look at just the eighth grade, the amount, I didn't ask you anything. If you look at just the eighth grade and just the amount of time they're spending on this, and you remember that these are adolescents, right? These are kids that, they're trying to make potions at lunch with as many different drinks as they can, and they're having a contest, like, they're 6'2", and they're getting in a line when we go outside for lunch and go, we're going to have a heel clicking contest, can you tell us who's the best? Yet they're going home and they're like working on literacy and math skills in this program. So like, yes, it is something that maybe they don't all love it, but they're buying into it, like adolescents are buying into it. And I just feel really proud of them. So I wanted to show this slide to you guys. And then here we are at Arch 4, and over to the right, I'll start with that because we did get the approval for the roof. But there was some I have more
Parts
pictures.
of the roof, not the whole roof.
Parts of the roof.
Important
yes, and the important parts of the roof, as you probably know, were identified in the
stuff where they're boring.
Yeah, there's a moisture survey, and these are some of the infrared pictures of the moisture survey, and then we have some internal pictures where we have kind of mini waterfalls, nothing like the high school had, but some mini waterfalls and some roof tiles that need replacing. And then we have just sort of the picture. I didn't put the whole, picture up there where the problems are, but we are super excited about getting parts of a new roof. And then another focus is our learning walks. Learning walks are happening in our building so that we're getting into classrooms more, because ultimately what we want to achieve is having teachers get into teachers' classrooms and really feeling more comfortable doing that with each other. And so we're doing some building school-based walkthroughs where we're just like walking through and noticing things and then sharing that with teachers, providing coaching opportunities. We might work with our interventionists at that point because they're pushing in a lot instead of pulling kids out a lot, and that really is an effective way that we're kind of incorporating our learning walks and our intervention strategies. And then we're doing that at the district level as well. And then our through line is that we're trying to calibrate our thinking, which we realize we can't do, but it might give us a lens to kind of like how we're sharing and how we're providing feedback to teachers, and maybe kind of switching that up so teachers get a lot of different feedback and coaching opportunities from different people in their lives. And I think that's it. I want to close with that. I know we got the Blue Ribbon Award, and we're super excited about that. But I want you to know how serious I am about how much I care about the place where I'm currently working, and like how much work we do need to do, and how much I really am passionate about moving that work, and how much I love middle school kids and families. Any questions?
I have one, and this is more to clarify because I think you talked about this, but I want to make sure that I understood it correctly. So I know we looked at the high needs data, and you talked about the needs of the students with disabilities. That's definitely like a through line we're seeing from the middle school to high school, very similar data, great scores for our students, but students with disabilities is an area of focus for the district. And I heard you talk about tiered interventions, pull-out services, RAMs, block, supplements like IXL. But what about can you just talk more about what's the tier 1 instruction? How are we supporting their needs in the classroom with the day-to-day tier 1 content?
One of the biggest things we did this year at RAMS is we created a language-based teams. So kids with language-based disabilities, they're not just receiving those services in elementary schools. Now they're going to receive them at RAMS. And so the teachers that are in those language-based programs are, getting trained in like OG and, the things that they really need to help those kids. So instead of those kids going out to receive those kinds of services, they're getting them in the classroom. We're also working with Landmark, and we're working with ALN, and those are just two outside groups that are going to come in and assist teachers in, we're still facing not only gaps in achievement because of students with maybe disabilities or other things going on with them, right? But also COVID, right? We're still seeing gaps from that. So we're trying as educators to figure out ways to best help those kids. So we bring in a group like All Learners Network, it's ALN. What they're focusing on is giving kids menus, right? Giving kids choices in their classroom so it's truly differentiated while they're in there, and they're able to say, I'm working on this high leverage skill at this level. I'm working on this high leverage skill. Same skill, maybe at a deeper level, and then that can continue. So they're really broadening our ability to do that as a school, and Landmark is really helping us with our literacy services. And I think, what I said about the curriculum specialist pushing into classes, that's huge because they're going in as additional people who actually have lots of data on which students to target and bring along in those skills. So when we talk about Tier 1, we're really talking about what's happening in the classroom and ways we beef that up.
And one more thing I think that we didn't mention was that last year I rewrote the job descriptions for the curriculum intervention roles, and then had that model so that we have 2 at each building, STEM and humanities, and a big part of their role is to help support teachers with curriculum development, but also to go in and coach teachers. And so we're trying to get them more training as well. Joni's been working with them. And to provide those opportunities so that they go in when teachers are struggling with their kids. Not only am I going to help intervene with the kids, but I'm going to come in and try to give you strategies and supports along with All Learners Network. So I think that's another piece of the model that we're hoping will prove helpful as we go over.
And I do want to say, like, the teachers are awesome. If you walk down the halls, like, you'll be smiling, you'll be seeing kids working, you'll be seeing kids smiling, you'll be seeing you'll be seeing all the things that hardworking teachers do. But for some reason, if we're not making the progress we need to make, we all want to do something different together. So it's not to say that anyone isn't grinding and like doing their job. It's just to say, like, we're trying to make a really impactful shift, and I think that I think we have the people to do that.
I think we are seeing that we are closing the gap on the student growth percentile. It doesn't mean we're, everything's perfect, but that's, I think, part of the reason we have seen some of the successes with the national movement and so forth.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
When you talk about the menus, is that all on like software that they're doing on their Chromebooks? Like, what are the menus? Like what they're choosing to do?
So a menu is just like, say you have like a lesson plan or a learning plan or whatever you call it as a teacher. You can call it anything. And then you, when the kids come in, you have, say, a standard, right, or an objective, or like, this is what I want you to know and be able to do when you leave, right, or when we finish this unit or this week or whatever. Kids, you take that skill and then there's choices. So it's like when you go into a restaurant.
So it could be any sort of like, it could be a worksheet, it could be read something, it could be.
Yeah, but there's all different levels. So like you have different maybe reading levels, you have different like skill levels, you have different like depth that you get into. But the beauty of it is like kids are fluid.
Supporting that same.
Yes, that same high leverage skill. Yeah.
And that's an All Learners Network kind of, that's what they're coming in and working with our teachers on.
Yeah.
So one of the things I hope that you're hearing is, a couple weeks ago we had Jerry and Jess here. Last week or a couple weeks ago you had a curriculum specialist here, and they kind of gave an overview of kind of what they were doing, and we're trying to go a little bit deeper and show you some of that data. So I hope you're able to see some of the connections. We're presenting tonight, but there's teams behind us that are putting this work together for us. We've got our literacy people in the building. We've got our assistant principals, our SSAs. We don't do this on our own, but we're up here presenting the information to you. We've got teachers that are on committees that are doing a lot of the work that are on here. So at Miller, again, you can click on that. That goes to that lengthy doc with all the stuff in it. But we did a highlighted one. Today when I'm doing my slides, the big focus is going to be on 2 and 3. I will chime in with some of the communication that we're doing throughout, because I think the communication with families, all families, making sure it's interpreted, translated for all families, is a goal as a district that we're trying to do. Ruler's a big focus on the 3 schools, and a big initiative that we have is a climate and culture calendar that I'm going to show you that we're building throughout the year. We've gone through 2. We had a group working on November's today, but this comes out of kind of, if you go into the next slide, where did this all come from? It came from staff surveys, it came from parent surveys, it came from student surveys. 2 years ago, we did a survey of the staff, and this started our climate and culture kind of committee. And it was kind of there. We weren't, getting a lot of feet on the ground. And then we did our student survey and parent survey. We only had like 50 parents out of 600 participate in that first year. So we went about it, and last year we had a lot more. Obviously, all of our students did it, but we had 233 family responses that time. And again, we had all of our staff. one of the things that drives it is, it's out of a 4-point scale, and anything under 3, we wanted to take a look at, and one of them was, I don't feel comfortable at school, was under 3. And so how do you make everyone in your building feel like they want to be at your school? How do you have, if you're under 3, on a family that doesn't feel like they're welcome and it falls in, one of your different racial categories? How do we make everybody feel comfortable in our schools? If you go to the next slide. So this year, this summer, we had a Climate and Culture Committee get together and take a look at how we can tie all of our different initiatives together. How can we really focus on making Miller a welcoming place? So we've got on the left side some school events and celebrations. Then we go into Ruler. What are we focusing in on Ruler that month? Next, PBIS, what are we focusing in on there? We're trying to tie in health because health wasn't taught at Miller, only at grade 5, because we put science into the classroom. And then how are we tying the UA into all of this? Our first month, our theme was Welcome In, because our new theme for the school is Welcome In, Expect Greatness. So this month was Expect Greatness. Our first month, we took a look at creating charters in the classroom, classroom charters with Ruler. And this month, we are looking at teachers teaching the mood meter and what that looks like. And I know, I think it was when Jerry L. was speaking, there was a question, how do you know what's going on? And I'll show that on the next, can we go to the next slide? On the next slide, you can see it around our building. We've got a live mood meter in our front hallway. And we actually have teacher pictures depicting some moods. So you've got some that are sad or some that are happy, elated. And again, these are teachers driving this mood meter and putting this up in the hallway. You've got a couple examples of classroom charters. So you go to the classroom and there's your charter. How do students want to feel in the building? We are trying to do celebrations, whatever they may be. We had Spanish Heritage last month. Each day over the announcement, we were giving, examples of some famous Spanish people in our country. This month was disability awareness, and so there's different topics that we're trying to do. We had World Smile Day, where we had taking pictures of kids smiling, teachers dressed in something that had a smile on them. And again, a big push this month was our mood meter. So if you walk around the school, you are going to see it alive with the different things that we are trying to help students want to come to school because they feel safe in school, and we're trying to address their social emotional needs while we're doing that. One of the big pushes, can you go to the next one, was attendance. And I know I'm going to get to the slide that everybody else did, but I wanted to walk you through, what the state tries to do, and they give you a point. So last year we were at 11.5, okay? They give you a target. They want you to get to 10.2. And so that's your target. And if you make that target, you get a 3. But if you exceed that target, which we did, we got 4 points, and I'll show that later. And that ties into all those academic pieces too. They give you a score, they want you to make it here, and if you get to that score, then it's like a 3, but if you advance beyond that, you can get a 4. If you don't make it up to there, you might get a 2, and if you drop, you may get a 1 or a 0. But this is kind of how that point system works on that chart that I'm going to show later. The one thing that's a little discouraging in this one, if you look at our L's or former L's, you know, we declined there. So that means that our L's weren't attending as much as we wanted them to. So we've got to dive into that. We've got to figure that out, and, you know, how can we do better with that subgroup? You want to go? So people showed the data dashboard. What we're trying to do, go back to the communication piece, we're trying to communicate this with staff every week. You know, here's where we are this week. Here's how our kids are doing. We have a student support team that we meet and talk about the students that we see are above where we want them to be or chronically. We have our guidance counselor talk to our school nurse. Were they out because they were sick? Has anybody contacted them? And if they haven't, we contact them to find out what's going on. Is it an anxiety piece? Is it something? It just so families know that we're trying to, you know, work with them to make sure that their child comes to school. We're communicating this process. We did it at our back to school nights, how we were going to be addressing attendance this year. It goes out in monthly, we communicate, but it's also, we're sending out that individual report, as you've heard, to every family once a month. They'll probably, I believe they're getting another one on day 45, which is right around the corner. And so parents will get a regular reminder about how their kids are doing. Your kid may be doing great, but you may also not know that your child has been out. And 2 times a month over the course of the year ends up a child being chronically absent for the year. And so parents need to realize that if they're going on vacation, if they're doing anything else, but we want to make this aware to the whole district because the state is holding us accountable to this data. And up until now, you can see we're at 7%, which is above, better than we were, 8.4 at the end of last year, and 77% of our students have improved attendance this year, which is good. And our data dashboard can give us this information. But also remember, we haven't even scraped the surface of what we're going to, we don't know everything the data dashboard can give us. Right now it's at the admin level, taking a look at that. We're working on getting it into the teacher's hands, but we're not there yet, sort of thing. Next slide. This may look familiar to you. I'm going to point out our 0 points in the ELA goes to our Tier 1 instruction. And, what are we doing to try and focus on that? Well, I think we heard Ilsa talk a couple weeks ago. She was looking over the summer, they worked on the sentence level and getting kids to write in reading. We need to look at a more structured literacy approach at Miller. I know we've got all learners, we have Landmark, who has been working with our special ed teacher. We have Landmark coming in for Placentino and Miller teachers, for all teachers, to look at what that looks like in their classroom, to focus on that Tier 1 instruction, because as you can see, we had 0. In the year before, I believe we were at, let me pull that out. The year before, we were at 2. So we still weren't making the progress we wanted, but we were at least at a 2. Our number is 76 down at the bottom there. The year before, we were at 57. So we have improved in that area. The big piece, and I think you saw it at middle 2, the 4s under the lowest performing students. That's showing us our lowest performing students are exceeding what the state is asking us to. So what that's telling me is our Tier 3 instruction, so our special ed instruction, our specially designed instruction is working. Our Tier 2 instruction is working. We've got our WIN block that we use at the Miller School, and now with iReady, we're able to monitor 3 times a year, but we're able to use MyPath to focus on some of the skill areas that they're weak in. So that's a bonus. The other thing is, under the science, we were a 0 under science last year. Under the lowest performing, we didn't have a big enough cohort because that is only 5th grade data. So that's why there's no data under the science achievement there. Under all of them, we are on target on growth on ELA, math, and in our lowest performing. And under the chronic absenteeism, we were a 1 the year before, and it got worked up to a 4. So we are seeing gains, but we do know that in ELA, we've got to really look at that Tier 1 instruction. So here's our data, very similar to the other schools. Ours is set up differently because I needed to see it side to side, not up and down. And so you're going to... So that's the way my eyes went. So the non-high needs is on the left, the high needs is on the right, and you can see the comparison and how much better our non-high needs kids did than our high needs kids. The one thing in mathematics that even though they're at 36, there was growth. There was a 57.3% growth, which is good, but again, the achievement level is still down in that area. And here's some other data that we're able to get from iReady. So on the right is iReady. And so if you look at the green is grade level. Students are at grade level. If you look at the yellow, they are below grade level, but when this assessment is given at the beginning of the year, these are third grade, these are grade level skills that they haven't been taught yet. So anything in yellow is green is okay. It's the red you really want to focus on. And so those students have already been identified. They're already on our list. Those students are already getting interventions. And so promise in ELA, so that top piece, and it is, I believe it's phonemic awareness. It's all green. It is not actually on the assessment in grade 3. And so it's
all green anyways.
And so Jamie was telling me it's all green. But if we look at the phonics, the green that goes across there, that is showing us that the students coming up from Placentino, they are getting that phonics piece that was weak for a very long time. And so I'm encouraged to see that coming across. The data on the left is Dibble's data, and I don't know, I'm going to have to read to you what some of the Dibble stuff is. So Dibble's looks at nonsense word fluency. It looks at word reading fluency. It looks at oral reading fluency as all ways to, and all those are given in an assessment and scored. And so you can see what the data is, and that's real-time data, beginning of the year data. So we do look, again, at the red. This is another data point for us to see how it fits in with the iReady data. And how, if it's grade 4 or 5, how it might fit in with MCAS, but it's a totally different assessment because MCAS is usually more comprehension and writing than it is more, that fluency piece or that reading piece. And our last piece is here too. So what iReady can do for us, and we actually have a PD day in November on this, half day, and this is going to be explained in more details to the teachers. But Ashley Bouchard and Ilsa O'Brien have gone in and explained this to the teachers. But it will give us can-dos, what students can do, but it also will give them focus areas that they need to work on with each student. And in the bottom right-hand corner, this is an actual class. We kind of bubbled it out so you wouldn't see the names. It can create educational groupings of students who all need the same strategies. So you've got your reading groups or you've got your math groups in different areas. But this is what the iReady tool can do for us. And so that's kind of my data for today.
I have a couple.
Sure.
I'm going to ask about students with disabilities again, not to be redundant, but just because when I look at the DESE heat map, the school and district profiles, our education to career, DESE dashboard, all of it points to students with disabilities as a focus for the whole district. So looking at your culture and climate data, because I see that's a real big focus for Miller. When I look at your vocal data, grade 4 and 5, not on all items, but there are a lot of items where students with disabilities rated themselves significantly lower than their peers in looking at environment, safety, and engagement. So I'm wondering, with your climate and culture focus, how are you thinking about supporting the needs of those learners with your initiatives?
So I'm going to go back. Were you looking at the vocal data? Gotcha. We actually found the vocal data more telling or more informative than the survey that we gave out last year. We found that the questions on it were more just better for us. We have not taken a total dive into all of that data in the vocal in what was provided to us, but when we did our initial dive into it, we wanted to make a local vocal survey because it was more accurate, I think, for us. The one thing, and this is one thing I don't like about the vocal data is it comes at the tail end of 4 days of testing that nobody wants to do, and so a lot of kids are just rushing through the data. But at the same time, it is something that we've got to take a deeper dive into.
And then another question about your data too. So it's clear you're looking at a range of data to identify student needs and target some supports. And looking at your MCAS data, so in 2021, 63% of students were meeting or exceeding expectations. This year, it looks like 47% in ELA.
Yep.
So as you're working with Landmark, I'm wondering about how you're looking at the MCAS data, your iReady data, your DIBELS data, to really drill down and what's the focus with Landmark to move students toward more students to mastery of ELA standards?
Well, one of the things we know it's an area we need to focus on. I mean, it is, and it's pretty telling. And iReady is new to us, so it's a new tool for us, and it's the information it gives us in the areas that students need to focus on is better data than we've ever had before at the classroom level. We may have had it where special ed teachers may have had it, or our reading tutors may have had it, but not all of our classroom teachers are reading specialists who can dive into that. So our hope is that we can build on the information that Landmark is giving us and the skills and strategies that they're putting forward. The other thing that at the end of last year, and again, Landmark's going to help with this, the My Pathway, Karen showed it in the IXL where kids go on and they do it 10 minutes a day or 50 minutes a day. When we saw the data that the students who participated in that pilot last year made significant gains over the students who just took STAR and didn't have that specific instructional path. So my hope is with the iReady piece and the pieces that we're getting from Landmark and All Learners Network and All Learners Networks and you know, all of our special ed teachers in the last several years have been trained in multi-sensory approach to reading. And so specific, but don't want to go into specific, it's more multi-sensory. And so our hope is that we will see that go into the classroom.
Everyone still with us?
Yeah, that's for a few more minutes.
Okay. So I'm probably going to be brief on a lot of arches because I feel like my colleagues really talked about it, so I'm going to touch upon it, but my brevity shouldn't, I hope it doesn't communicate that we're not working as hard at Placentino as the rest of the schools. I just don't want to be redundant of some of the things that we're doing. So if you go to the next slide, this is our overarching pieces. We're doing, if you look at the document, it's much deeper than this, but what I wanted to do is pull out some of the high leverage pieces that we're working on. So when we look at Arch 1, we really are enhancing our communication practices, not only with our families, but with our teachers as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're supporting student attendance as we get into some of the other arches. When we look at Arch 4, my colleagues talked about the work that we're doing around learning walks. My colleagues talked about all the work that we're doing in each of our schools around building a stronger school climate. And I believe Dr. Koska talked a lot about us launching our staff portal, which is really it also ties to Arch 1 around the communication practices. So tonight I'm really going to focus on Arch 2 and Arch 3. When we think about Arch 2, my colleagues talked a lot about Ruler. We're doing all of those foundational pieces to build emotional intelligence with our youngest learners, starting with our babies, our 3-year-olds, learning those emotional vocabulary words. And I'm going to talk a little bit soon about our approach there. We're also part of year 2 of the Culturally Responsive Education Academy, and that is going to be weaved into some of the things I'm going to talk about. So why don't we go to the next slide? So thinking about our approach to social emotional learning, I feel like that at Placentino we've taken on a lot. So we have PBIS, we have lots of acronyms, right? PBIS, we have Ruler, we have our DEI initiatives. And it was kind of information overload for our teachers. And you know, when you try to take on a lot, sometimes you don't do anything well. So one of our focus was how do we tie all this together underneath the umbrella of social emotional learning and wellness for our students. So we had a committee this summer come together, and much like Mr. Khan talked about his calendar, we kind of developed Cheryl Carrero, our assistant principal, led this initiative around developing a scope and sequence for our teachers that tied it together. So it wasn't just here's a PBIS lesson, here's a Ruler lesson. It was built under themes and really tried to integrate it together so that our teachers understood what they were doing, so that our students, our youngest students, could be that end user and be able to have the biggest impact on it. So we're really proud of that. Next slide, please. As you saw across, we've been addressing absenteeism. I do not have an accountability slide. I'm sorry you don't get to see that again, but at Placentino we do not have MCAS, so I do not have an accountability slide. So I feel that it's important that in full disclosure we talk about what's going on at Placentino and our absenteeism. So if you looked at our absenteeism across the district, pre-K to 12 plus, actually Placentino has the highest level of chronic absenteeism for our youngest learners. So diving into that, why? What's happening? Well, I think it's easier in our minds sometimes of our families to think about that keeping our youngest learners home might not have as big of an impact as our older learners. When we look at our chronic absentee data, this is from about last week. We have a team as well that meets weekly to look at this. We broke down all of our students who are already chronically absent. Half of them has been because of vacations that are more than 5 days. So it's an impact that we're trying to, we want a balance of family life, but also we know that we can't educate students if they're not in school, and we know that it might not feel like a lot for a kindergarten to be absent 10 to 18 days, but that begins habits, and that gets compounded over time. And as they get older, they're missing more and more school collectively throughout. Another part that we are struggling with at Placentino is our tardies. Up to about last week when I pulled this data from our data dashboard, we already had 303 tardies. Talking to Mr. Boudet and Dr. Jordan about this, some of this is impacted by our late arrival of our buses. We have two lines into our building. I have my kids coming off the buses who do not get marked as tardy, and I have kids coming out of cars who are being marked as tardy. As a parent, that might not feel great, that I have other kids walking in. It's hard for our parents to maybe even know when school starts if it looks like it's a rolling start. Many of our tardies are 5 to 10 minutes, and it's something that I'm hoping to fix when we adjust our bus schedules, to be honest with you, so that we have our students, that we're transporting students are actually getting there on time.
Don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
does this include the late buses or?
No.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
No, it doesn't. But it is a problem. You can see I have a row of cars, and I have people seeing kids getting out of buses. They think that their students are on time.
Grade 2 seems out of control.
What'd you say?
The grade 2 is like, obviously all of these are not great, but.
Yeah, it's a lot. So move next slide. So I'd like to celebrate some of our success. We have been working for the past 3 years to really shift our literacy approach. As Mr. Keim talked about, in our current third graders, when they were kindergartners, we implemented a phonemic awareness curriculum called Heggerty and really shifted our approach in that area. When our current third graders were first graders, we started structured literacy, and for the past 2 years, really been implementing that. When I did peek into your DIBELS data today, and I focused on looking at what we call correct letter sound, which is the decoding of words. That's when we have all those sounds and we break them apart. 78% of our third graders were at or above. That is a huge achievement, and I'm really proud of our teachers, especially led by Jenny Mann, to do that. So this is our success of what we've been doing. Next slide. When we look at, I wanted to point out some pieces. I wanted to show our current second graders. So our current second graders, compared to their, so MOI is middle of year, NOI is end of year. So phoneme segmentation, that's the ability to hear a word, breaking up into sounds, putting it back together. That is a foundational piece for learning how to read. When I look at our current second graders compared to the middle of the year, DIBELS says beginning of the year data for kindergartners is not as reliable as middle of the year because they don't have the same experiences coming into kindergarten. So the most reliable data for this is middle of the year. If you compare from these the same students from middle of the year kindergarten to end of the year first grade, we decreased our intensive supports by 26%. We increased our students who scored above the core by 26%, and we increased our students who scored at core or above by 41%. These are the same students. Next slide, please. When we're looking at their ability to decode that correct letter sound, these are the same students. For this, we were able to, this is the same data, we were able to look at decreasing intensive by 26%, increasing by 26%, and again, that 41% of students who are now in an increase of 41% for kids who are in core above core. The instruction's working. Our shift in practices are working. And what I'm hoping is that you're hearing Mr. List talk about the struggles in literacy. I'm hoping that our foundational work of having kids breaking that code, that's what we call that, being able to decode, break the code, so then they can focus on that higher level thinking of comprehension and synthesizing and analyzing instead of struggling with just learning how to read. Next slide. So where is our area of focus this year? Our area of focus is in math, specifically in number sets. So what is number sets? A number sense is just that foundational piece of math, much like I talk about in reading for where phonics and phonemic awareness is. It's their ability to be able to understand numbers and their relationships, not just memorizing procedures. When students are able to compose and decompose numbers, to understand their meaning to each other, to be able to perform mental math, so what you automatically do when you go to the grocery store and you're trying to estimate something in your mind, that's that mental math. Having a confidence in reading, something that is my probably biggest pet peeve is when people say, oh, I'm not good at math. You would never hear someone just proudly say, I can't read. I believe firmly that we need to build strong, confident mathematicians, and this has been an area of weakness in our district. It's part of the reason that we chose a new math curriculum. Eureka Squared Math really lays a foundation for number sense. Next slide, please. So this is our current data. This is our why when we look at, what is that? Is that it? Thanks. So as Mr. Kine said, this is our iReady data. So what we did was we took that yellow and we broke it up into two different categories. So as Mr. Kine described, yellow is students who are approaching that grade level. We looked at our data and our numbers and felt that there was such a range in the yellow that it wasn't really accurate to keep them in the same category. So what we did was we looked at the range and broke them up into half. So we looked at students who are in that light yellow as approaching, and orange who are really at the beginning of the previous school year. So those are the students the students in the orange and in the red that we really need to be focusing on beyond the tier 1 changes that we're making. So in kindergarten, we have 23% at or above, 73% who are approaching. First grade, 22% at or above, 34 approaching, 33 who we feel are at the 1 grade level behind, and 11% who are 2 grade levels behind. Grade 2, 28% at or above, 36 approaching, 23% 1 grade below, 14% 2 grades below. This is our why. This is where we need to be focusing. Next slide, please. So what's our plan of action? So we're implementing Eureka Math Squared with all students this year, pre-K through grade 5. The program itself relies heavy on those visual models that are shown in the bottom, which helps foster and build their number sense. It also uses a coherent progression so that every unit they're on, it cycles back and they're continuously building their number sense. And it elicits student discourse. So what is that? You haven't seen anything until you see 3-year-olds discussing numbers. And that's how they build their number sense, through conversations. Next slide, please. We're going to be continuing to use our data to analyze and guide our instruction, conduct not only the data that we're doing here, but our STEM curriculum coordinator, Kristen Marino, will be helping teachers with number talks and number interviews with students to be able to have a bigger understanding of what their thinking is. We'll be doing targeted math interventions, and as Mr. Kime talked about, using iReady and its learning path. So, and not just let's get on the learning path, but what is, there's a composite number in math that shows where students are. You have to dig beyond that composite number, like what is their piece. So if it's number sense, making sure that they're doing targeted work in number sense. If it's geometry, making sure they're doing that. And having our teachers really understand how to manipulate that and change it. Next slide, please. And then finally, doing targeted teacher professional development with this. We're partnering again with All Learners Network at Placentino. Not only have we had some full-day professional developments, but we're also doing some additional optional professional development that is in small groups, grade levels for our teachers, so that they can work on building student number sense, looking at student work together, increasing their discourse around number sense with each other through a facilitator. And then next, this is our school-wide goal. I would say that I have 90% of our classroom teachers who signed on to this goal as their student learning goal, and that is their professional learning goal. They're utilizing a number sense goal as well. So I never feel good about saying 80% will meet or exceed. I always think about that 20%. That being said, I think this is a pretty rigorous goal considering where we currently are, but we're committed to 100% of our students making measurable growth. And that's where we are. Hillary, come on. I always get nervous talking about math in front of you.
You answered a lot of my questions.
Oh, good. Okay.
No, but I appreciate the way you laid that out. Like, this is our specific domain we're going to target. This is why. This is how we're going to do it. This is the support for teachers, and this is what we're going to look at. And this is data we're going to use through like middle of the year, end of the year to monitor that. So that was really clear. Which is why I only have one question. But I wanted to go back to the literacy piece, and I'm sorry if you said this and I didn't catch it, but your data, Miller's data, looks really strong with like the foundations of reading, the phonemic awareness, the phonics, the decoding piece. And when I look across the two schools, my wonder is about reading comprehension, like you mentioned.
That's really that next step for us.
Okay.
You know, I think that we really needed to focus on, at the same time, all along, we've been working on comprehension for our teachers. So, you know, they've been doing their read alouds. We've been doing shared reading. We're building common vocabulary, that piece. When we think of structured literacy, it does include comprehension. I think there's a misnomer that people think that there isn't, but there is. In Landmark coming in, what they're going to do is the success that we've had with our Tier 3 in OG training and other multisensory approaches, they're going to be helping bringing that into our classroom. And Jess Beatty is working really closely with them, and we want to work on strategies for comprehension as well. Thanks.
This is great. This is really important stuff. I do think maybe in the future we want to consider maybe splitting it up over tonight because I think
We're elementary school, so just like what he said, right?
I think this is no, because this is really, really important. But I think that when you do it over an hour and a half, I'm not entirely sure that we're able to give the sort of the attention and detail that I think it deserves.
Yeah, and I think, as you know, we've increased how we're looking at data. When I first started, we had kind of shifted, and we've been trying to get that balance back. So, of course, when you start integrating, and they could have put a lot more, but
Sure,
I
helpful.
I liked the top. You actually had to take some out.
But I think what would be helpful to us is, this is the first time, I mean, we usually share our goals. We're not throwing in the data on top of it. So if there's data you like, data you didn't like, if something was more informative than others, you know, now that we have the data and we're starting, let us know what, or give Susan feedback on what, because we were not sure what to bring forward.
And I think when we do the mid-year goals, we could probably just do the data. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we don't have to talk specifically about it, just like where the data has grown or not.
Yep. Some of the links were not like working when I was trying to link to. If you want to take a deeper dive, look at this, and I was like, I can't.
But are you in slideshow mode?
Yeah, if you.
Okay, if you're in slideshow mode, you should be able to, but maybe not.
If you can't open one, let me know.
Yeah, there's just some that weren't.
Okay.
Opening. And I was like, I want to see what that little thing is. So
Yeah, just let me know tomorrow.
Wah, wah.
Try to put somebody on order. All right, thank you all very much.
I got more to go. Not so fast. I could say
He's still on the agenda.
Wait, but we still have. Don't we still have Dan? Did we skip Where's he going?
Should we wrap up his pieces? Thank you, everyone.
I'm sorry,
No.
that happens every.
Oh, sorry. No.
You can still stay.
No, you
It's just-
can
yes.
stay.
It's still a public meeting, just not open for comment. No, just everyone's left.
I was like, oh.
No.
Mr. List is on the hot seat.
Okay, so I guess we're not quite ready to do the international trip tonight.
No, I just didn't print it out, so I
Okay.
didn't have it to give to y'all.
So we'll add that to the next night.
Yep.
But then I guess you have, we put on here the update from the high school schedule committee and the work that you're doing.
Yeah. So we've been meeting with the schedule committee. Where we are right now is, as I said before, we've identified, and I talked about in my presentation, the needs that we need to meet in the schedule. Those are obvious. I've talked about those for over a year now. And so moving forward now, we have to sort of put that into play with actual kind of numbers and Power School and what works. And so what we're working on right now is getting a consultant from Power School in to be able to tell us based on sort of our needs, based on what we have, based on all of the things that we want to keep and not keep within our within our courses, our schedules, our credits, all of those components that make up a schedule, what can actually kind of work within that using the multitudes of structures that Power School has access to because of the thousands of schools that they work with. And so hopefully that meeting will happen in the next week or so. Dan McLeod's pulling that together for us as the liaison through Power School. And so that we'll have that meeting and then go from there with what structures kind of can fit within our parameters.
Okay. I mean, I think it's been pretty clear from discussions, that we've had when you've come before us that we have some significant equities in our schedule. One concern that I've had too is the length of the blocks that we have now, and I certainly don't think I could see supporting lengthening that block. So hopefully we're looking at things. I think I looked up the average sort of. The recommendation is 50 to 60 minutes. So I don't know where you are. Maybe you're not ready to share that, but I just wanted to. I don't know where the other committee members are, but just thought I'd share that as you continue on with your work.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at sort of looking at everything, but I mean, that is what the most recent, data would tell us is that, between 50 and 60 minutes is about the attention span of students. I'm not ready to pull out. We're looking at 60s, 2.5 minutes. As we're looking at really what it is now is there are within a schedule there are so many variables, and so we really have to look at what actually works within what our requirements are, and then be able to present that out to the staff with what's best for students.
And then obviously just for the community, I'm sure you know this, but we are also dealing with a January 1st deadline that we agreed to within the MOA for this work, for your committee to come to a consensus, and then we have, I think, till April 1st or April 30th, something like that
it's something in April.
To ratify, but because then there's going to be time once a change or what status quo is decided that that will then need to seek just feedback and sort of get that out there to the community.
The working with Power School will be kind of the guide that we need that really helps us with the minutes, the credits, the courses, that piece there. So that will sort of hopefully be the thing that can move us forward rather quickly to meet that timeline.
And just your question.
So you'd expect another update at the November 14th meeting then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my next question.
I like coming to school.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Any other questions?
My only advice for the schedule committee, like we're learning from the school bus start times. Start with guiding principles, like what you're trying to achieve, because there's going to be so many variables that are not going to make everyone happy. But if we agree on the guiding principles, then ducks start falling in line.
And I do think we're there in terms of, because I mean, last year I presented a lot of school, like NEASC gave us a lot of feedback on the inequities. The equity audit gave us a lot of feedback on this there, just looking at, again, our student achievement data, looking at our student access to different programs, different courses. Those were like staring us in the face. Like those are there. I think at this point it becomes, if you ever want to watch the Bill Gates documentary, they actually had him when he was in high school build his high school schedule because of how complicated it was, because he talked about it, that documentary, like it ends up like it's an infinite amount of variables, because you're talking about 800 kids with 800 different schedules and different needs and all of that. So I love the puzzle of it, but I think the principles there, I think at this point it's looking at what we can actually do with those principles, because if we want every kid to have access to the arts, if we want our students who have learning supports to access electives, if we, all of those pieces that we want, that we have to figure out what works to build that.
Yeah, there's definitely some barriers that need to be removed, and that's the reason.
Right, absolutely.
I guess the other thing I'd like to see, so there's the like, this is our current schedule and this is where we're going. In the meantime, we've got kids who are currently, will be in like almost like a hybrid mode, where they've been in, they've had the block scheduling for however 1, 2, or 3 years, and then they're going to switch to, so what is the transition plan for some of those things where they have the, they're trying to get to calculus, and how do they get there now when it's a year-long course?
So we've been talking a lot about that. That's not really, the scheduling committee is focused on the structures. Like on the other side of it, just to give you an idea of what that looks like, is there's conversations with the math department chair, and I've had conversations about that. If what we have to have versions of math classes for a 1-year stint to make sure the kids get what they need in that time. Any schedule that we look at that is not the block schedule, plus that extra 15 minutes in the day really increases the amount of time on learning, so it allows us to access more within the time we have. So we're looking at all of those pieces all the way through, and I would say that in 99% of cases, it's a math question versus the other content areas.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Now you're.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yes. You too. You can stay if you want.
Nope, only Barbara.
All right. We'll get back to the policy and the second reading of IKE. Can we waive the actual reading?
No, we have to read it a second time.
I thought we could waive the second.
We can waive the third. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll just read it.
It is short.
Promotion and retention of students, code IKE. The Holliston School Committee is dedicated to the best total and continuous development of each student enrolled at Holliston Public Schools, HPS. Professional staff is expected to place students at the grade level best suited to them academically, socially, and emotionally. In evaluating student achievement, each teacher will make use of all available information, including results of teacher-generated tests and other measures of skill and content mastery, standardized test results, and teacher observation of student performance. The principal will direct and aid teachers in their evaluations and review grade assignments in order to ensure uniformity of evaluation standards. Students will normally progress annually from grade to grade. Exceptions may be made when, in the judgment of the professional staff, such expectations are in the best educational interest. What?
Such exceptions.
Sorry, what did I say?
Expectations.
Sorry, exceptions are in the best educational interest of the students involved. Exceptions will only be made after prior notification and explanation to each student's parents, guardians, but the final decision will rest with the building principal. Review MASC.
Anyone have
Thoughts?
any thoughts, comments, concerns, questions?
Okay. I would we could recommend that we waive the third reading and adopt the policy as presented.
I'll accept that motion. All those in favor?
Okay, thank you.
In the books.
Moving on.
All right. The central office update.
Just a couple quick things. I mentioned earlier, but we had the two-parent coffee hours, one on Monday and one tonight. And I think Mondays was a little more represented, but I also think it's worth continuing, and we probably will offer another one. The next time we were thinking of doing it by Zoom, whether day or night, so I think we're going to just try different ways, but continue trying to reach out to parents as much as possible. And then I did have my first, I mentioned the Miller Roundtable, I think, already yesterday, but I just wanted to point out some of the things that the kids, I think it's just a testament to the work that's being done that they talked about tonight. I asked the kids to talk about their hopes for the year. I will say 2 of them talked about a later start time. They hope that everyone's included, looking for composting, that everyone knows each other's names, making school lunch better, everyone understands other people's feelings. They'll work on their rise cards, and the new playground like Placentina, which I'm not sure, their playground looks pretty good too, so I'm not really sure about that one. And then they talked to me about what can they do to bring more equity and inclusion in school. I mean, this is stuff that they gave me. I asked questions, but they were generating it, and what that means, and talking about how kids are sitting alone, bring them into, invite them to come and play with them and things like that. And I also they talked about charity work, and can high school students and middle school students, which I'll go back to our middle school and high school principals, about having them come in and do some charity work with them at the Miller School as well. So I think it really is showing that the work that we've been doing around that culture and climate and that social emotional well-being is carrying over, because I'm seeing the maturity in the kids. And this is third graders too that just came over from Placentino. It was a large group. I posted a picture of that group, and they all knew what they wanted to focus on. So I just think that's really telling that the work is moving the needle for social emotional learning and equity. That's all I have for today.
Okay, great. And then you need a vote from us to appoint you to the board of directors of the Tech Collaborative?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion to appoint Dr. Kuska to the board of directors as the representative from Holliston for the Tech Collaborative.
Moved by Dawn.
Second.
All in favor? And just note Cynthia's absence or abstention.
And then the Accept Quarterly Update is in the folder. If you had any questions, you can reach out to me separately, but it's just a quarterly update that the executive director produces for the board members, and we're supposed to share with each of you.
We will accept the Accept report. I'm very clever. All right. Dr. Bernard?
Yes, I just wanted to share some wonderful news. There's a team from Holliston that's been accepted to the 24-25 Dyslexia Institute, and they're going to have professional development on enhancing their learning and action planning to support students diagnosed or at risk for dyslexia. And the staff that will be attending this is Jess Beatty, Jenny Mann, Dr. Slaney, Lisa Robinson, Ilsa O'Brien, and Nicole Marchand. So congratulations to all, and look forward to hearing their work.
Great.
I'll get out of the way first. Contained in your packets is the updated list of clubs. There were no changes at the high school level. Miller had the 5th grade leadership that was added. The reason they were missed before is just the cycle for the posting. It wasn't on the cycle of the posting, so. And then Tulip Rams, the Dungeons and Dragons Club, and the Student Council.
Okay.
So if I can get an affirmative vote on that list without reading every item.
So nothing got taken off from the high school?
Nothing got taken off.
Okay. And was there anything that they tried to add because it's been run for a number of years that was denied?
So the way the pilots work, they're supposed to tell me last year if they're piloting something, and then at the end of last year, they were supposed to let me know if they were bringing it forward.
Okay.
So nothing was brought forward from the high school from any pilots.
Okay.
And this doesn't contain any casual clubs where 5 kids may get together, may include a teacher, but again, they haven't gone down the path of trying to become an authorized club. So something that you may know about or your children may participate in may not be on this list because it's not a school for the authorized club. So.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to accept the list of clubs that's presented in our packet and presented by Mr. Boudet for the...
Second by Hillary.
Okay. Do you want to wait for...
She's getting a book.
Cynthia, do you want to vote on the list of clubs?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I did have a sidebar. GSA Club is not GSA Dream. They don't go by that name. No, did we fix that? It's the Gender and Sexuality Alliance.
Yeah,
Can you please make that amendment?
I think, David, Jordan, you had mentioned that it should just be to say GSA for that reason, because it's changed at different times.
Gender, I think, yeah, I mean, they called it what? He called it
Correct, yeah.
GSA. Yeah.
Middle school, it is, but the middle school's got a GSA. I think it's just, as far as listed in the contract, that's the way I would recommend as a straight GSA.
So for the high school, right now it says Gay
The
Straight
high
Alliance,
school is
GSA Dream.
But it's called the Gender, they were calling it the Gay Straight Alliance. And at the high school, it's the Gender and Sexuality.
So that's the high school. The way I believe it's listed is like what needed to be updated was it was listed as Gay Straight Alliance, which is no longer current.
Correct.
Middle school is listed as GSA.
Okay.
And I would recommend listing both as GSA. We can list it both as the Gender Sexuality Alliance.
It should be whatever's in the contract. I'm just going to say. It has to go through the contractual.
Yeah, because they technically have to vote.
Yes.
No, I think it does. I think it should be with it. So let's just vote. We have a motion. We can amend the motion to basically approve this list and just give the administration the ability to make sure that everything matches what's in the contract.
Or matches what students are calling it.
No, I think in this case we actually should be following the contract, and then we can make a change to the contract at the next. They can then call it sort of whatever they want, but the official sort of title is what's in the
So
contract.
if it just says GSA, but this one says GSA Dream.
Right. So we can. So the amendment would just be to call that GSA.
Okay.
All right.
I don't need to have a big bee in my bonnet about it, but I do.
No, it's fine.
Just want it to be accurate, that's all.
All right, so do we have a second to amend that?
Second by Tom.
All in favor of the amended motion? All right, that passes 7-0. Okay, Dr. Rick.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add that I'm really excited about the Rams roof. Having lived under that roof for over a decade, I am very excited by it. I don't get to experience that, but I'll have to make those walkthroughs through that. Karen's been great. Sean Keast, who is our maintenance person, has been instrumental in kind of like helping with some of the photos that we've needed there. And so I know the staff at Rams are going to be very excited to address this well overdue need. The playgrounds, as far as working with the town, and Robert Walker with DPW, as far as making sure the berms are in there and kind of wrapping up what's needed from the playgrounds or making where we need to be. Wall seems to, here at the high school, seems to be holding up well. Miller, the trees warden had come out and trimmed the trees along the side of by the basketball goals so that our small critters couldn't crawl up the tree, use the branches to get on the roof and make their way to the courtyard and lose their way in the courtyard and find a way back. So that's been addressed, and then we'll finish kind of addressing kind of some of the cleanup that needs to be done in the Miller courtyard specifically. We have some just kind of like updates to some of our alarm panels that we're in the process of. More on that, but that's just kind of something that we're working on as well as similar to what had been done at the middle school is kind of moving our heating system as far as temperature system to the computers that we have there to be able to kind of track that more remotely. And then the auction, the auctioneer came out this week, has taken photos of all of our surplus items. We've moved those items and made space for them, so that process should be starting here soon. And we'll learn more on that. And then I think that's, let's see, yeah, that's what I've got. Thank you.
Great. I look forward to the auction quote coming in to fund the whole year of the schools.
It's going to be like $200, and we're going to spend the other.
Free cash, close to free cash. So put it down.
All right, well, I'll put in a note to Travis to tell him it's ours. All right. Thank you, guys. Moving on, so we are creating a stipend position for the 5th grade variety show.
Right, and I don't usually bring you stipends to vote on this early in the year. This one falls off schedule because what's supposed to happen is clubs start in October as a pilot, and then the contract language that we had memorialized was also that by March, then the principals would have to let me know if they're going to move it forward, and then I would bring it to the school committee, they would vote on it, and then I'd meet with the union to negotiate the factors. So because this one was recommended for a pilot last year, but the pilot couldn't start till May because the activity doesn't begin until May, there was no way to fall in that timeline. So that's why I'm bringing it to you to vote on now, as far as if you agree to approve this as a stipend, and then I meet with the union, and this one's going to be pretty easy, and we could probably do it electronically to come up with the factors on it.
So we're just basically approving the position, and then they'll be negotiating, and then we'll have to approve that after you come to an agreement, right?
No, because the factors, I don't think you have had to vote on the actual factors. You're supposed to just vote on it.
Because we voted on the numbers before.
I know, I think it's because we were doing it a little off before, but I'll double check. We'll look at the language again.
I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll figure it out. But for right now, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I do. So I was under the impression that we already had this position.
So they've been doing it. Again, it's sort of like what Dawn was saying. There are clubs and activities that people do, but until they want to move it forward as a stipend activity, then it has to go to the pilot.
Like my daughter was doing the variety show way back when.
So
many years
people
ago.
were doing it, but nobody ever asked to
whatever.
formalize it. So that's we go for Mr. Kime.
All right, I just assumed that it was
year.
just part of it. Okay,
Yeah.
my bad then.
Any other questions?
Second time today.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the creation of the grade 5 variety shows stipend.
Moved by Dawn.
Seconded by Cynthia.
All in favor? Aye, thank you. That carries unanimously. Moving on to reports from the subcommittee. Communications.
So I did throw together a quick newsletter for October.
Yeah.
I emailed it to all of you.
I
So
just added some stuff.
yeah,
You see what I was?
I saw that. Those.
I don't know if that's necessary, but I just do.
The other thing is we were told that, a significant majority, but we don't have any details.
So,
numbers.
That was what we were told, so I just figured to include it.
A reported,
Sure.
just a
I just
significant
included
majority of.
significant majority. I just, based on some of the feedback that we were receiving in that group, I felt like it was important for us to reiterate not only the mission, the assignment that we've been given, but also that this was ratified by a significant majority of.
Right, I don't disagree. I'm
just saying it again. I know you're not disagreeing with me, because then that would be a third thing, and I can't have that.
Okay, so ratified by both a reported significant majority?
Yes, sure. I mean.
Report.
Are you going to add that?
No? Okay, fine. It's terrible.
Alleged.
All right.
Alleged.
Alleged.
That's not out.
Oh, it's almost 10. Okay, I mean, that's what we were told.
We're having a majority,
And then unanimously by the school committee. That is absolutely true.
Let's just say a majority, then we'll take my significant out.
Thank you. Let's nix the October 24th as our next meeting because at the bottom.
Because we're
here.
Yeah. Sorry.
It's the 14th.
Oh, yeah, and
just take it out.
Do we want to do an office hour?
No, she has a section. We will be holding office hours via Zoom on Thursday, November 7th.
That literally just, so.
There's always Halloween.
We should probably reserve one for the start times. Well, I guess November.
I think maybe after the meeting on the 14th, because hopefully we'll have some
I mean, I can
real.
hold off on that, and we can broadcast that.
Yeah,
right?
but we're planning to hold an office hours to do,
I'll just take that out.
in the near future.
I don't know that we're going to be ready to do that this one.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll.
Okay.
We will be scheduling office hours in November, and we'll update or just take it out.
I'll just take it out.
Okay.
Office hours at 3 p.m. on Thanksgiving.
There's always Halloween.
Halloween.
Bring the candy. Okay. Any other? Thank you for putting this together, Sarah.
Yeah.
Something else?
No, I just was checking our dates because originally there was it said we had a meeting on December 25th, whatever it was. It was like on Christmas Day or something like that. It's not.
I took this from the
she fixed it.
the master list that has the presentations listed. So as long as that's updated.
And just there's a add timestamp for YouTube, so just don't forget to add the timestamp for the YouTube and the link to the YouTube video for tonight's meeting. For Mr. List's update on the.
Sure.
Yep. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the newsletter, and we can get that out tomorrow.
Moved by Dawn.
Accept my things.
As amended.
Just accepted them, so now they're in there.
So moved by Dawn. Seconded by Cynthia. All's in favor?
Thank you, Sarah.
Unanimously. Thank you very much,
So
Sarah.
should I send that to Dan?
Yep.
And I just need to add the YouTube.
Yep.
Great.
All right.
Policy.
Our next meeting is Wednesday, November 20th at 4:15 Central Office.
Okay. Budget.
We have not had a meeting since our last school committee meeting, but we will have a meeting before the November 14th next school committee. I'll talk to you about availability.
Great. And Superintendent eval.
I am trying to, Susan and I have been really trying to figure out a date. I did just send you back an email, Susan, for us to have our preliminary discussion about how this is a formative year. Last year was our summative year. And to review over our last year's evaluation as part of that. And then we'll get a meeting to discuss the overall goals and then bring them to the school committee.
Okay.
So I don't have a date certain yet for that.
Okay.
But
Great.
I put them out. I threw them out there.
Nice.
They're in the universe.
In the universe. All right. So we've done the high school pieces, and we don't need I don't think we need anything on the October town meeting. I added that just in case something had come up, but we do have on here an update from the bus start times advisory committee. We have talked about it a decent amount, but is there any more of an update?
I think that, again, we've got a meeting scheduled for next week, for next Tuesday. We're optimistically hoping that we'll be able to either bring this to some sort of conclusion with regards to a recommendation of which schools together and which go first and which go second, or if we can't come to that, what the criteria is, or the constraints is probably a better word. Constraints are that we would say that, in the decision-making process, like nothing before 7:30 or nothing after 4, things like that, just on the things we could agree on.
Yep.
Yeah, I just kind of try to, for example, like Ben Sparrow was there as well, and Cynthia and Frank, and what was it kind of agreed, or there's common understanding is if we can't reach a firm conclusion, at least a list of what the group agrees are very important considerations for the school committee to make, and a lot of those considerations may not be possible, but at least it captures for like the public and for the various committees that might be able to make decisions that a firm understanding of what are the important things.
Okay. And I did hear Ben agree to give our buses clickers to get through the lights.
Yes, he did.
So and you agreed to
I
that,
heard
so
a
it's
lot
now
from him,
contract.
actually.
Yeah.
Like he was talking about like some infrastructure changes. So
Yeah.
that's what I heard.
I mentioned it to the lieutenant today in a meeting as well.
Rotary
Raised bus ramps basically. Just
Well, all right, let's talk agree, but I will say that some of his contributions was to say that he absolutely wants us to move forward with bringing something to the select board to talk about how we can make some of these pieces work. Mr. Goudet was mentioning things like, is there a road that we could open up? Is there like something we could make into a one-way? Is there, like, what can they do to help support the sidewalks? So, like, I know that they have a sidewalk plan, but maybe there's some things that we can do to kind of shift that, because if we can allow more kids to walk, have safe routes to school, then that can kind of offload some of our burden with the buses.
I would like to see some information and data on different potential sidewalk routes and how utilized they might be from parents.
Yeah. Well, I think not all roads have to lead to the rail. As much as I love the rail trail, I mean, not all roads have to lead to it.
So you don't really love the rail trail?
I wanted a commuter rail, so
you
you're
anti-Holliston?
barking up the wrong tree over here. Like, I was like mad moving into town and saying, oh, we voted down a commuter rail? Right, great. Anyway, but now it's lovely.
So I'd say if conversation were to steer here with this school committee around like different policy changes or things that might need to consider as far as parameters around like who gets picked up and what have you. Sidewalks will aid in like the walking to school that might be needed.
Because we are going to have to discuss, from a policy perspective, who we're allowing to bus.
Right.
Because right now,
and I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around that, and then so we'll end up starting off with two start times that are some distance apart, and then hopefully we'll be able to walk them closer. And it may take a couple of years to do that, but minor, not we're not looking at huge changes.
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
But 5 minutes here and 10 minutes.
It can be significant, but also if you're picking up a student that literally is right.
Right. So there's some things we can do immediately, and then some things that might be So
it's a huge district. These are all the challenges that we faced when we were coming up with this plan, and that's why we ended up going with that flipped model, because it is.
And this is why I think that this committee has been good, because just listening to it, you hear all of the different issues. That this is not just a very easy sort of like, let's just pick some times and
it's been very
pick some bus routes.
instructive for folks to see how it's all made.
And I do hope that people listen to those meetings. You do have to toggle up and down the volume as Keith talks and as other people talk, but you can't you can hear. You can't hear everything if you do that. There's I think 99.5%, I'd say.
Because it's off of Keith's computer, so when he speaks, it's
and it's just logistically it's too difficult to get everybody on the picture. But one thing I did want to throw out there, and this is going to be unpopular, but since we're on the topic of unpopular, I might as well go for it. So we have November 14th as a meeting, and then we don't meet again until December. We have a lot of work to be done and a lot of deadlines and stuff to be made. So assuming that this committee can come to a decision next week, or I know you sort of set yourself a next week deadline, but let's leave yourself a little grace. You can't meet on the 5th because that's the election and the polls are open. So
the 6th and 7th.
But you could meet on the 6th and the 7th. But I also don't know if we want to do all of this work during a regular meeting with everything else that we have to do. So my unpopular idea is, do we want to look at potentially scheduling another meeting to just talk about this?
Yeah.
I'll make the turkey. That's the turkey.
Yeah, no.
I would agree with that. One, it'll keep us focused on that. Yeah. And yes, I think it's important enough. And I honestly,
What are we looking at?
Well, I will send out a group of dates, and we'll see. I mean, this will be mainly, obviously, a school committee working group, but we'll need, some administration guide.
I think your challenge may be, though, with regards to the amount of input. Members of, whether it be the public or the teaching public, that are going to want to have a contribution to this. So to push it much further out, I don't think you've got a ton of time.
No, I don't want to push it. I want to do this before the 14th.
No, that's not.
No. We're not to make a decision.
Okay.
But to start having conversations.
You mean between the 14th and the 12th?
It's Halloween or the 7th.
Okay, you want to do it that way?
No.
Like the 21st.
What about the 21st?
My thing is, we might need to do some sort of survey of the community based upon what. It depends on what we get.
But I want to be thoughtful. Like, I don't want to throw a survey out there. So we need to be thoughtful of what we're putting in that survey. Otherwise, it's
it may be that we need 2 meetings and to be really unpopular.
I think it just depends on whether we're going to actually have something to present. So first, we have to kind of, as Keith had already instructed, that we need to figure out which schools and which ones go first and which ones go second. Then after we do that, that's when you can do things like modeling, but that might take some time to do.
But Cynthia, I don't think we're going to get there next week. Every time we try to get there,
we're going to get there. That's it. Or we're going to have parameters.
Well, I think what's going to happen at Tuesday's meeting is a bunch of recommendations of what we need to go do next as a school committee. Like, they're not going to decide on groupings and times because there's so many factors that are going to come up. Yes, we agree on something. It's like, oh, did you think about this? Well, now that needs to change.
I think the challenge, which is also the challenge in the high school scheduling committee, that isn't as public, is like a lot of time has to be spent explaining complexities of like a schedule in order to even open the minds to considering a change, and that's a hard process to do in that, and so I'm in agreement with Frank on that. So
there's just a lot of decisions we're going to need to make if we're going to make changes to who we're going to offer busing to, and those decisions then feed into what the times that we're going to be looking at and deciding are, right?
As I say constantly during that meeting, it's about structure. You have to have your structure in place. The times are going to feed themselves, more or less. You're going to have a start time, you're going to have a run time, you're going to have an end time. They're going to feed themselves. So, with regards to that, the structure is going to be the most important thing. Which schools together and which schools first and which schools second.
We have 3 weeks before our November 14th meeting. Is there any reason why, and I know the committee is scheduled to meet again on October 29th, right? The
29th, yeah.
The 29th.
Yep.
Is there any reason, and to Dan's point, you can't meet on Election Day, November 5th, but is there any reason, and I think we even saw this in negotiations, we thought we needed X number of meetings and then we needed more. Sometimes when you start this project, it takes a little longer than you think it will. Is there any reason why the subcommittee wouldn't be open to having 1 or 2 additional meetings before we get back to the 14th?
I'm sure they would. They as if those who've listened to the recordings, they do like to talk. And I mean, because they know, but I'm saying is that it hasn't been a silent group.
Right.
No.
I mean, we end meetings because it's time to end it, not because we've exhausted, discussion.
Right.
So from that, if we say there's going to be 2 more meetings, people will come and people will talk. I don't know how much further we're going to be able to kind of move down that path. I don't know how many things are going to change at this point.
I think we need to see progress next week, and if we get to a point, like in negotiations where we're getting close, we say, let's schedule another one. If we say we're going to schedule 2 more, we're going to regress, in my opinion, in some ways. We need to keep moving it forward. And if we, at the end of next Tuesday's meeting, we feel like, okay, we're closer, but we're not done yet, let's schedule another meeting.
I mean, it'll come down to that, whether or not we think there is a recommendation coming, as opposed to, challenges, desires, et cetera, et cetera.
The strategy, though, has been we've talked every single scenario. Like, I was hoping one would be like, aha, that's it. I think we've talked about every scenario twice, at least, and there's always something.
And we need to see what you guys come up with. But then, I mean, I'm just saying, if we do decide we want to survey the community on something, if we want to have a forum or some sort of public hearing, if you will, about this, I'm just, we're the 14th, then Thanksgiving, then then, you know.
I still think whatever
December.
we land on, there needs to be, what are the guiding principles? Why are we doing it the way this is? Just because there's so many scenarios. Like, we're saying not to 4 o'clock. Well, if we do 3 bus runs, we're going to 4 o'clock. Some school is. That's just the nature.
We're not going to 4 o'clock.
I know we're not, but.
I think as a school committee, you're going to have to accept the fact that there's going to be a angered constituency, whichever one it was. You had one that potentially doesn't want their times to change from first thing in the morning that showed up tonight. There's going to be people who are going to be dissatisfied with whatever the solution is. So you kind of have to figure out what.
But I want to hear the input before the decision.
No, I understand that. No, I understand.
And I don't.
I'm not saying to hear it. I'm just saying hearing the input's not going to give you the perfect answer, because there is no perfect answer to this.
No, there's no perfect answer.
Right.
But again, I also don't want to be voting on this on December 31st.
Understood.
I'm not going to be here on December 31st.
Well, then you'll.
None of us are going to be, as far as I know.
Right. We're just worried about the time frame of it.
I get it. I cannot, just given by the discussion, I cannot guarantee that that subcommittee is going to want to recommend, I mean, at this juncture.
Right.
Will we get there? Maybe.
But all
I
the
don't
more
know.
reason-
There's a lot of chatter that they don't want to recommend anything. They'll just give us some parameters, the way Dr. Jordan was saying.
So what we'll do, I'll wait until after your next meeting, see what happens, and then I can throw out an email. We can schedule via email that is allowed under OML. So we will.
Not that the 29th is arbitrary, but I do, if we're making progress next week, and I know 6 o'clock, we do have the Coalition Against Hate and Bias at 6, unfortunately. Not unfortunate for me, but the timing, like, we have to close. We consider potentially adding another meeting. But if
Yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with leaving.
If the other meeting, I was saying, if the other meeting is getting us to a resolution,
Yeah.
sure.
Yes,
If the other
but it's
meeting is
not,
just more discussion.
No, agree.
It's not worth it. That's what I'm saying.
But if we leave and say, hey, Keith and Dr. Jordan, we need to look at these things, and then we feel like we can come to a decision, I'd say it's definitely warranted a subsequent meeting. If we keep doing what we're doing, totally agree, we're going to be in the same spot.
If the energy is good and we're moving in a positive direction, I don't think it's. I think it behooves us to have another meeting to keep that energy to go, because if we can reach a good place with this group, I think that benefits you all in kind of how you.
It would be ideal to have a recommendation, or at least 2 options, or some things to sort of at least get us started, even though we can go another direction.
Even if we can't give a firm recommendation, right, the options are going to be.
Ultimately, this is why we get paid the big bucks.
Yeah,
Right?
I got 100% raise last year. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on this? All right. So that does bring us to the end of our meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Sorry, did you have something else you want to say?
Our next scheduled meeting is November 14th. Stay tuned to
You have
see
to make
the.
that quick, because that's my anniversary, just so you know.
Okay.
Make it quick.
All right. And
I know you don't care, but I'm just.
so now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Cynthia really wants to make that motion.
I did.
So I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.